concern to everyone there tonight. Just looking at this this church's website, we know that they had a potluck scheduled for tonight from 5 until 7. We believe tonight was supposed to be a potluck of some sort. The Boomers potluck area, you saw that again. So there was an event scheduled tonight. Again, the scanners begin going off with this traffic about 6:20 or so tonight. We know that we see a stretcher being brought in there to the left of your screen. Just to give you some orientation, if you're not familiar with this area, this is right in the heart of Cahaba Heights, just down the street from that new Chick-fil-A that just opened in the last year or so, around the corner from the Publix there on Overton Road. If you're familiar with Cahaba Heights, not too far back from I-459. So there again, a residential area where this church is sort of nestled in there. And what we know so far is that there has been a shooting inside the building, according to Vestavia Hills police, potentially multiple victims. And the last report is the officers are still inside clearing that building.
We're getting a live look now at the scene. You can see a large police presence there at Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills. Again, we're talking about what could have been happening there at that church, and we do know from their website that they were having a potluck dinner. This is something that they have every third Thursday of the month, but of course tonight is a very different day, as you can see that police presence there on the scene there in Vestavia Hills.
Again, we don't know much other than that, and of course information scarce at this point with all of the back and forth we're seeing, certainly among the scanner traffic, and you've got multiple agencies responding, of course, to this. When there's a call like this of an active shooter, everybody is trained, of course, just to get to the building as soon as possible and to neutralize the threat. We saw that training repeated several times in the wake of, unfortunately, these all too common shooting incidents we have seen across our country in the last few weeks. Of course, you think of Uvalde, Texas, you think of Buffalo, New York, among others. Situations where, again, anybody who is able to respond to go in and try and neutralize the threat, obviously that is of great and first concern tonight. And certainly for folks who have loved ones who are at this church, the concern, of course, is for their safety, and that's something we're trying to get as soon as we possibly can. Just not a lot that we know at this point, Sarah, other than the fact that there's a lot of folks there.
And when you talk about the school, you talk about a grocery store, and now we're talking about a church. These are places that people go on a regular basis, and they expect a level of safety, and that sense of safety appears to have been shattered tonight.
Again, an active shooter, we are told, is what the call went out for Vestavia police about 6:15 tonight at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church right there in Cahaba Heights. This is Crosshaven Drive, the 3000 block of Crosshaven Drive, where they responded to this scene tonight. We're told there may be multiple victims inside. Again, don't know how many or how they're doing. Also do not know yet whether police have secured the building. Obviously, you see some of the body language there is all we have to go on in these cases. The body language is fairly relaxed from some of these paramedics we've seen and some firefighters as well. That perhaps would be a good sign. Of course, they're also going to wait at first. They're not going to allow those first responders and paramedics into the building until they know it's clear, it's safe, and any threat has been neutralized. So obviously these folks are waiting to give aid to any victims, and they cannot go inside until their safety is assured. Something, of course, that they're all waiting to learn about tonight, but ready to help. Obviously, there's a lot of resources and well-trained resources here. I want to mention we have crews on the way to Grandview Hospital, which would be, we think, the closest facility to this area. If you're going to take victims to get treatment, it would probably be to Grandview, and we have got crews at that station as well to try and give us some information about what's going on there if we see those victims head that direction.
Fire paramedics there on the scene, police on the scene. We saw a stretcher rolling by. Couldn't tell, Jonathan, if there was a person on that stretcher, but you could see this is a heavy response to what appears to be a shooting at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia Hills.
Again, it looked to me like, Sarah, like we had an equipment bag on that stretcher, so that perhaps is a hopeful sign. Again, when this body language is that of fairly relaxed, you don't want to read too much into that, but obviously these folks are simply waiting for instructions, waiting to be able to help, which is what they're trained to do. And we are blessed and fortunate in this area to have so many well-trained first responders who know what to do in these situations, who know how to do triage for gunshot victims if there are those. Hopefully, of course, not, but it sounds like there may be. They know how to try and get them to first-class medical facilities, which are scattered all around the Birmingham area, and certainly Grandview is one of those, one of the newer ones in our area, and again, probably a 5-minute drive at full speed with lights and sirens going from this church, where again tonight all we know is the call that went out for police to respond to an active shooter. And Vestavia Hills police tell us they believe there may have been multiple victims inside.
And we know that this church, according to their website, was scheduled to have a potluck dinner tonight from 5 until 7 p.m. This is something that they do every Thursday, every third Thursday of the month. And that is all we know at this point. And we're watching to see, it looks like one of the paramedics may be driving off.
It looks like that ambulance is coming out, perhaps with somebody inside. We just don't know. Obviously, again, folks, we want to give you the best and most accurate information we can. And at times like this, there's just a vacuum of what we know, and that's not a whole lot. So we're going to give you what we know. We're not going to do any speculation other than what we can verify. I'll tell you, we've got several crews on scene. Looks like they're moving some of our crews to Publix, which is one of the staging areas. And again, that's just around the corner. If you know this neck of the woods very well at all, if you know Cahaba Heights, you know this church, well established there. A relatively newer building, but one that's been well known in Cahaba Heights for some time. You see now those ambulances coming out. I think Catherine Patterson's with us with some new information. Catherine?
Of this shooting confirmed at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia Hills.
Okay, that was Catherine Patterson. We had some audio issues there. We'll hopefully get her back in just a second to see what she was saying, but she was going to give us some updates on what we're hearing there in the newsroom, close to where the heart of our newsroom operation is, the assignment desk there. We'll get back to Catherine in just a second, telling us what we're learning about this church, the shooting at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, just down the road from Cahaba Heights Baptist Church. There's several communities of faith in that area, Sarah, and again tonight all the focus is on St. Stephen's.
All we know is that they have reports of a possible multiple shooting victims here at this church. We are watching, and we have our crews out on the scene right now gathering information. As soon as we get more details, of course, we will bring that to you.
All right, let's go back to Catherine Patterson, who's with us in the newsroom, and what we're learning down there. Catherine?
Yeah, hey guys, I hope you can hear me now. We just want to give you an idea of where this church is, where Vestavia Hills police have confirmed the shooting. This is St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. This is kind of a zoomed out view. 459 you see right here. And if we zoom in, this is on Crosshaven Drive, where Overton Road and Crosshaven Drive kind of meet. You have Cahaba Heights Baptist Church down to the south of it, Publix on Overton. So that's an area around where this church is. And we are updating our story on our WBRC News app and on WBRC.com as we learn more information, because more details are coming into us, into the newsroom every single minute. But as Sarah and Jonathan, as you were saying, this is on the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church website. They were having a Boomers potluck tonight that started around 5 o'clock. We do know that we got word of this shooting that happened a little maybe after 6:15 tonight. So again, we will be updating you on our website, on air, of course, and on our app as we get more information into the newsroom.
Okay, Catherine, thanks so much. Again, we will get you back to the scene there with our live pictures in a moment. Our crew's actually being moved back a little bit by police there who are trying to establish a secure perimeter. We did see, Sarah, a couple of those ambulances who had arrived with help from Mountain Brook, and I believe it was Cahaba Heights or Cahaba Valley, North Cahaba Fire District there, that were moving out without lights and sirens. Again, not really sure how to take that. They may be moving them somewhere else to stage. They may simply be moving out because they don't need them, and that might be a hopeful sign. We just don't know. But obviously, anytime the call goes out that there's been a shooting, a multiple shooting perhaps inside a church, everybody's antenna goes up, and obviously your hearts go out to folks who are waiting tonight for news because they knew someone who was at that church.
A lot of those folks might be tuning in to us right now, wondering what's happening there. We are giving you as much information as we are getting in. We don't want to scare people, but we want to give you accurate information of what we have learned so far at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church on Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills.
Of course, my mind for a moment, Sarah, turns back to one of the last shootings inside a place of worship or business that we knew of around here, and that was at UAB Highlands Hospital. If you remember that, back in 2018. It was about this time of night, it was about this time of the year when someone walked in and opened fire inside that hospital. And obviously that was a situation where there was so much we did not know for a long time yet as things began to unfold. Reminds me of this situation in that we just don't know what's going on, but you attach a series of very scary words together, obviously perhaps an active shooter and a church, and that gets everyone's attention and everyone's hearts, of course, in Cahaba Heights tonight. Back to the scene live here. Our cameras have been repositioned slightly, but gives you a good sense of exactly how many folks who are first responders in the area are responding to this scene. Obviously a very active situation. And I believe hopefully our control room will help me decipher here. I know one of our crews was being moved to the Publix in Vestavia. I don't know if that's the camera position where we are now or not, but this would give you some idea of where our cameras are located. And Catherine was helping us to sort of give you a look at that map and orient you to where we're talking about. Stevens is on Crosshaven Drive, basically just a block and a half up from the Publix on Overton Road. Folks know where that is. And maybe, say, 2 blocks or so from that new Chick-fil-A in Winn-Dixie there in Cahaba Heights, right in the heart of that area. Is where St. Stephen's is located, and it looks to be a church of a couple of hundred parishioners every
You would imagine that police have an area, a perimeter blocked off in that area, so if you're traveling in that area, you might want to steer clear of that scene right now.
Yeah, our Lauren Harkson is getting in position to give us some information live from the scene there, and I will tell you, our Jen Horton, who is now at Grandview's Emergency Medical Center, ER there, right off of Highway 280, says she has seen a Vestavia ambulance pull up to the ER bay there. Again, it could be completely unrelated call. They would run patients to there if they were going on a normal call. Maybe related to this, we simply don't know. Just trying to give you as much information as responsibly as we can as we now hit just past 7 o'clock here on WBRC Fox 6. I'm Jonathan Hardison along with my pal Sarah Verser here, ready to give you continuous coverage of this breaking news, what we do and don't know so far about a shooting inside the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church.
Let's go to Lauren Hartson now. I think she's live on the scene to give us a little bit more information. What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, that's right. Right now we were just moved actually by police. All we know right now, there was an active shooter at this St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. Now we don't have much information right now. I know we have a couple public information officers who are getting some info together for us right now. They haven't shared details at this point, but we were a little bit closer to the scene just a few minutes ago. You can see there are police officers here. As I was driving, a couple fire departments sped past me too, so a lot of people on the scene right now. I spoke to 2 people on motorcycles a little bit ago, just asking about what was going on. They heard from a friend about a scene going on right here. They're also trying to figure it out. So as soon as we have more information, of course, we will be sure to keep you updated on air and online.
Lauren, you're there on the scene. I see the tape behind you. Give us an idea of how far you are from the church. Can you see the church? And give us an idea of the perimeter that police have set up there.
Okay, yeah, so like I said, we just moved back within the last 5 minutes. They put up this tape about a minute before we got on air live. Right now where I'm at, I cannot see the church, but they've got flashing lights. We're gonna have our photographer move in a little bit there. I would say we're probably 300, 400 feet away from the church. You can see the perimeter is where it stopped there. We have police cars blocking that road completely. So if you're hoping to drive down that way home from work today, of course, you're going to want to find another route. Here soon, we will be having to move to, we're told, the Publix nearby to get more information from public information officers. Of course, as we learn more, we will be sure to keep everybody updated.
All right, Lauren, thanks so much. Again, it's a team effort when we enter these breaking news situations. Lauren's one of our teammates on the ground. Jen Horton is at Grandview Hospital. I know the double box there said she's at Grandview. Lauren's actually there at the scene. Jen's at Grandview. Our Steve Crocker checked in with the Columbia Cottage assisted living facility, which is right across the street from the church, just to see if they'd seen anything. Says they could not see anything, but that facility is on lockdown and they are safe. So if you have family members there, be rest assured that they're okay. And Sarah, I was just looking at the St. Stephen's Facebook page, and it appears they have some church members who are in Greece today on a trip going through Athens and Corinth, trying to trace the journeys and the footsteps of the Apostle Paul in Acts. They posted some pictures from there about 9 hours ago. That was the last social media post before this incident.
And then we also saw on their Facebook page on today that they were scheduled to have a potluck dinner from 5 until 7 p.m. It's something that they do according to this website every third Thursday of the month. And now we can see a very large presence outside on Crosshaven Drive.
So I want to take you through again just what is normally the procedure here in a situation like this, right? The call of an active shooter at a church goes out, and immediately the closest units, which in this case would be Vestavia Hills Police, you'd have to think, although again, given the location of this, Mountain Brook would not be too far away depending on where they are. Those units would respond and begin to rush in and try and neutralize the threat. That's the number one thing you do. Yes. You don't set a perimeter. You go in, whoever can, they call it rally up, right? Whoever is a first responder who is armed armed and licensed to do so. You rally up there at an entrance, get inside, and try and neutralize the threat. And that is what we think has been going on in the last several minutes when this call went out. Then, once you have the threat neutralized, you go into a situation where you try and triage. You find the victims who are most injured, get them to immediate medical care, and then begin assessing the situation, making sure that there is no other threat, that the building is safe. So there's a lot of steps here, but obviously urgency is the number one thing when this call goes out. And as you can see, Sarah, there is plenty of help there.
And that help has the same kind of training. That is the point of the state training. It's very standardized for every department. As you mentioned, Mountain Brook is there. Other departments are there helping. They have had the same training. So when they go in with the Vestavia Hills Police Department, they are able to both work in tandem with one another. They've had the same training. They all know what to do.
That's right. And we know from our crews on the scene there, we have seen Hoover police units, we've seen Mountain Brook police units, obviously Vestavia Hills, both fire and police and paramedics from a couple of the departments as well. So they have all sort of rallied up there to try and help each other out. And as you said, these departments train together very frequently, especially those Metro Birmingham departments do a lot of cross training throughout the year for events just like this. Sadly and unfortunately, they have to train on how to secure churches and how to secure schools, two places where you would think yourself to be safe and not vulnerable to these kinds of incidences. And sadly, we are reminded too often that these places of worship, these places of learning can sometimes and often sadly are targets for incidents like these. And so they have trained the best they know how to secure these sort of situations, and that is what is going on right now, is putting that training into action. Certainly one we hope will have saved some lives here, is certainly the hope.
The first calls came out at what time, Jonathan?
About 6:15 or 6:20 is what we think. We had actually, just to let our audience know, Sarah and I had just gotten downstairs after the 6 p.m. newscast when this call was going out on the scanner. So 6:20, 6:25 is when we began to hear that this was going on. So we're still within the first hour of response to this. And that, of course, is an hour where there's a lot of interest, a lot of curiosity, and obviously a lot of concern about what may be unfolding at Stevens Episcopal Church, and not a lot of information.
Well, let's go now to our Catherine Patterson in our newsroom with more information from the First Alert Desk.
All right, looks like we will get to Catherine in the newsroom in just a moment, but again, trying to work our technical systems here. There's Catherine.
All right, guys, can you hear me now?
Yes.
We do have multiple crews on the scene, as well as at Grandview Hospital, where our Jen Horton is right now. She's sending in some pictures to our newsroom right now. She sees a Vestavia Hills Fire Department and an ambulance there. She got there maybe around 6:45 tonight, so sending us some pictures from Grandview. And as you guys were saying, multiple crews and multiple law enforcement agencies helping out with this confirmed shooting at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church off of Crosshaven Drive. Again, that shooting happening around between 6:15 to 6:30. Still no word yet on a suspect, how many injuries, but we do see a Vestavia Hills ambulance here at Grandview. Again, we have our Lauren Harkson on the scene, working to get some more information from the public information officers who were on the scene, trying to get those details together. And we will update you on our WBRC News app as we get more information. But as I go back to our First Alert Desk desktop, this was what was happening tonight at the church, Boomer's Potluck. This was happening around 5 o'clock tonight in the parish hall. Looked like it was supposed to be a wonderful event for people of all ages to join together for fellowship. But sadly, as we've learned from the Vestavia Hills Police Department, there was a confirmed shooting. Again, we are still working to get a confirmation on the number of people injured right now and a status on the suspect.
All right, Catherine, thanks. We are hoping to get an update from the public information officer for Vestavia Hills Police soon. They're, I think, staging at the Publix parking lot just down the street from this church. We're going to send one of our crews. I think Chastity Maxey will be there with Vincent Parker soon to give us some information there. Obviously, what we lack right now is a lot of confirmed information. That's what we all want, obviously, is an update on what happened inside that church. So that's what we're hoping to get to you very soon.
Our Lauren Hartson just giving us a report there from the outside. A good distance away from the church, police setting up that perimeter to keep people back. That road just completely shut down now on Crosshaven Drive.
Yeah, Crosshaven Drive, that part of Cahaba Heights obviously is that place you want to avoid tonight if you're moving around the Vestavia Hills area, Cahaba Heights area. Just stay away from it if at all possible, because there's obviously a lot going on in that area, and a very busy, popular area there in Crosshaven Drive, sort of the connection between Cahaba Heights and heading towards Liberty Park. Near 459, near the Chick-fil-A there, the Publix, I believe it's Cahaba Heights Baptist Church is also in that area. close to Cahaba Heights Baptist, right down the street from St. Stephen's. And St. Stephen's really nestled, Sarah, just next to a neighborhood. If you saw some of the signs there, Cahaba Heights, of course, very leafy tree neighborhood. It's kind of tucked in there amongst all those. And again, it appears they were having a potluck tonight. That may be the event where this all unfolded. I believe it was in the fellowship hall is what it looked like.
Parish Hall.
Yeah, so in the parish hall was where this was going on, even as they apparently have some folks who are on a trip in Greece, according to the social media, across halfway around the world tonight. And obviously their thoughts, as ours are with what's going on inside that building and also going on inside perhaps Grandview and other places where these folks are being treated.
So lots of you may have people who you love who may be in this vicinity. We're trying to get you as much accurate information as we can in a timely manner. But what we know now is this happened at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church that's on Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills. We see a large police presence out there. We see paramedics, firefighters, paramedics there as well.
There may be a hopeful sign here, at least in terms of perhaps the active threat being over. I'm looking at our crews now who are on the scene. Lauren Harkson is being told to head to the church itself to get some information from the PIO. So obviously they would not be sending the media into that location if it was not secure and safe. So there's perhaps a good sign there that whatever the threat was has been neutralized to this point, and hopefully we will know in the next few minutes about the extent of any injuries. Hopefully, of course, we're praying there are no casualties or anything like that. But the status of anybody who was inside that building, we should have an update on what this threat was, how it unfolded. And of course, Sarah, the question we're all going to have tonight, and I bet nobody will be able to answer reliably for a while, is why?
That is very true. That is the question that we always wonder why in all of these active shooter situations. We have watched it unfold in Buffalo, my hometown, and you've watched it in Uvalde among school children.
Yeah.
And then you talk about churches, and again, these are places that you go and you expect that you're going to be safe. No one expects something like this to happen.
A Boomer's potluck would seem to be a perfectly good thing to do on a Thursday night, a perfectly calm and safe thing to do. And at least according to the reports we have so far, and again, we don't have anything confirmed about injuries or casualties, there have been some shooting that unfolded inside the church. Again, may not have been at this event. It's just the only thing we know about that was scheduled to be taking place on a Thursday night, not a normal church night. Thursday night at this campus, we know that was scheduled to take place. So we hope to have more information for you in the next few minutes as to what did take place. Again, our crew is being told to push forward towards the church. This is not a live picture, by the way. We are moving the crews towards the church to get some information. But again, this is what unfolded as we were bringing you our live team coverage within the last 15 or 20 minutes. You saw some very tense moments for first responders there. But as you see, Sarah, lots of resources, lots of folks ready to help. I'm reminded at times like these about the famous saying of Mr. Rogers, which is look for the helpers, right?
Look for the helpers, yeah.
What he always said, and we see so many of those helpers there tonight, ready to do what they can to show. Let's show you where this is, Sarah, by the way, in just relation to Cahaba Heights, and give you some folks an idea what we're talking about in the Cahaba Heights area. So there's St. Stephen's right up. Just if you're on Overton and you took a left on Crosshaven, it's about a half a block up or so. If you kind of look beyond, we'll get back to that map in just a second. If you look just to the bottom part of Overton Road is where Publix is. A lot of folks that know that area well and go shopping there. I believe that's a Publix that used to be over in Cahaba Heights behind the summit, kind of across some twisted route. It moved up to that location maybe a year or so ago.
And you could tell from that map that the church is nestled in a neighborhood there. But we were going back to the response to this. This is what you see whenever there is an active shooter or any kind of emergency like that. Departments often help one another. They often send as many as they can because they don't know when's the next time that they're going to need that same kind of help. And so you see the response here with firefighters, paramedics, ambulances, and of course police departments coming from all over.
The term is mutual aid is what we hear so often, and that is what this is. It's helping each other out. So we know from our crews on the scene that Hoover and Mountain Brook Police sent some of their units to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church tonight to help out in what was an active shooter investigation. And we know that they have been working to try and get that taken care of, at least secured. Let's go to Jen Horton, who's at Grandview. Our first check in there where any of the victims might be taken for treatment. Jen, what do you see there?
Well, we're a little bit off campus here at Grandview. We're trying to give them a little privacy. Of course, we don't have permission to be on their campus, but we're trying to keep a close eye on the traffic that's incoming and outgoing. I think Catherine mentioned earlier, we were able to kind of just go up to get a look and see what exactly was going on right outside the ER bay there. We saw a Vestavia Hills ambulance. Of course, we're not sure if that's related. I've reached out to the PIO here at Grandview Medical Center to see if they're treating any of the victims from this incident. We've not heard anything back. We're working the phones, Jonathan and Sarah, trying to get information, call doctors, call nurses, call any medical personnel just to see where they're taking these victims. Of course, we still don't know how many, but when I left Red Mountain, well, the Vestavia ambulance is leaving now, lights and sirens on just behind me, headed back out toward 280. But as I was leaving Red Mountain, when we got this call not too long ago, I passed multiple ambulances headed downtown. I assumed it would be UAB, but it looks like this ambulance is trying to make a turn to head back toward the summit, toward Cahaba Heights area. Of course, we're going to keep a close eye on that. But as I had mentioned, the traffic here was pretty intense, especially I'm headed toward Grandview on 280. The ambulances, several police officers, lights and sirens headed the opposite direction. So it's really unclear whether these victims were all transported to the same location, if there are multiple victims, how many, their conditions, and so forth. So many questions tonight, Jonathan and Sarah, but we're attempting to get the medical side of the equation. We know we have teams at the church and at Publix who are trying to get the criminal investigation side. So we're hoping that we have good news when we start to get that information. But as I can tell you, we are working the phones. We're trying to get anything that we can find to hand over to our viewers, because we know this is an incident and a situation that hits very closely for all of us.
That's right, Jen. Jen Horton for us at Grandview. Jen, thanks so much again. This was where we would suspect any victims might be taken, but as she makes a good point there, UAB is well known for a level 1 trauma center. They have, unfortunately, a lot of familiarity with dealing with gunshot victims, so that could also be someplace you would take someone in this situation.
We're still waiting to hear from Vestavia Hills Police on this. What we heard from, in terms of what we knew from Vestavia Hills Police, that they were clearing the building. Our Lauren Hartson was saying that they are preparing for some sort of a briefing from the church. Initially, they were told to go to Publix, and now they're being told to go to the church. So we're taking that as some sort of good sign.
A hopeful sign that perhaps whatever the act or threat is over. Mountain Brook Police just tweeting out that they are helping another agency, obviously that would be Vestavia Hills Police, with an active investigation. Let's take this live now from Vestavia Hills.
This evening, the Vestavia Hills Police Department was dispatched at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church located at 3775 Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Multiple police and fire departments responded to the scene, and at the time I'm able to confirm to you that we have multiple people that have been shot. The suspect is in custody. The scene is still being actively worked. And I'm not going to be able to give you any additional information at this time. I do plan to meet back with you at about 8 o'clock this evening to give you some additional details. That is all I can give you at this time. I'm not going to be able to take any questions, okay? Thank you.
Meet right here.
Right here. Let me apologize. All media briefings will be right here this evening, okay? If we shift anywhere else, we will notify each other, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry. You have to go live one? Okay. So they got a call at 6:42 p.m. A call of an active shooter. Multiple people shot.
More.
So what we know, of course, is that there has been a tragedy that unfolded tonight inside the church. No matter what the status of these victims are, the fact that gunfire erupted inside a church is obviously a tragedy. So we know shots were fired. We know several people were hit. Multiple people is the term they use. I want to say several, multiple, which could mean who knows how many. Hopefully not very many. And then we know that the suspect is in custody. That's all we know. So we do have a little bit of information. We know the threat is over. That's the good news. But obviously, what our concerns and thoughts and prayers now are with the folks who were shot and how they're doing. And that's why we have team coverage for you. Our Jen Horton at Grandview, which is one place we think they might be taken to be treated. They might also go to UAB. And again, we expect to get at the top of the hour, now some 40 minutes away, another update.
He said that police are still working the scene. That's what police do, gathering evidence, making their case, trying to figure out, again, the big why of all of this. It's just sad.
It is. Lauren Harkson's is there, I think, where we heard from the PIO and can give us a little bit more information about what we're seeing, Lauren.
Yeah, that's right. Right now I'm here at Cahaba Heights Baptist Church. We were moved back from the scene, so now we're probably about 3 or 4 blocks away from the church. Just heard from Vestavia Hills PIO Shane Ware. Now he does say that they got the active shooting call around 6:22 this afternoon, and they do know that multiple people were shot. They did not give us a specific number, and they did not tell us how exactly they're doing at this point. But we do know that the shooting suspect is in custody. So that's good news. We have that information, so we don't have to necessarily worry about that. But the scene itself down at the church is still active. Now, we weren't allowed to ask any questions, and that was all the information, all the details that we were provided, but we will be talking with them again at 8 o'clock, so that's in a little over half of an hour. And of course, as we learn more through them, before then, of course, we'll keep you updated on air and online.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much. Let's just give a little overview for folks who are just tuning in.
Yeah.
We got the call about this active shooter situation right around 6:25 at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church that's on Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills. Our live picture showed a number of agencies responding to the scene. You can just see the breadth of it now. So many agencies there on the scene.
I see the Sheriff's Department, I see Mountain Brook Police, I see Vestavia Police, and we know Hoover is there as well.
So what we know from their website at St. Stephen's, there was a scheduled potluck dinner from 5 to 7 p.m. on tonight. And they do this every third Thursday of the month, I'm sorry. And that's all we knew in terms of from the church and what was happening there. And again, we don't know if it happened at that potluck,
right,
but we do know it happened at that church.
That's basically all we know about what was going on at the church at the time, at least what was planned. We do know the suspect is in custody. We know there are multiple victims, and that's all they'll say at this point. So obviously there was a lot of attention focused on those victims. We know there's a lot of first responders, paramedics there who are trained to deal with this kind of horrific incident and are doing their level best to get those folks taken care of. So obviously our prayers, our thoughts, and our hopes are that these folks are okay. And of course, Sarah, as we were just talking about, you can't help but begin to ask what in the world would prompt someone to walk into a church building where we assume this potluck was going on and begin to open fire. And the answer may be there's never going to be a great answer for that question, but obviously it's something that investigators want to figure out. And also we should add, in a scene like this, there's a lot to it, right? There may be multiple rooms. There's certainly a lot of evidence to gather, to process. And so once you get those folks who need attention taken care of, this turns into a crime scene, and a complicated one, but a very important one if you're going to make a case and press charges, as you would assume they will, against whoever it is that they have in custody.
That's why our Lauren Hartson was reporting live just a few moments ago from another church, not at the original scene there, because police are going to be very meticulous.
Yeah.
Going over that church room by room just to make sure. And to go back to the active shooter training, that's what was taking so long, because they have to go in and search room by room to make sure there were no other suspects with a gun that could be a threat.
They clear the rooms is what they say, and obviously in this situation, it's kind of an interesting building. It's kind of built at an angle, a couple of different hallways you'd have to go down, lots of rooms to have to get into and make sure are clear of any potential suspects. And so obviously that was something they had to do first. And our first indication that this active threat was over was when we knew that they were going to bring our media members up to that church area for an update. So they have done that. Again, very little information other than that we have the suspect in custody. and that there are multiple people shot. Here is a look at where we're talking about. If you're unfamiliar with Cahaba Heights, this church is nestled right there in the middle of a residential neighborhood. There's a Publix there down on Overton Road, kind of right below where our little sign there is. It says Overton Road is the new Publix. If you kept going down Crosshaven Drive, you'd run into the new Chick-fil-A restaurant up there that opened with, let's say, 12 to 18 months ago. Cahaba Heights Baptist Church is kind of right there where it says Crosshaven Drive. Just to the left there is actually that church building. There's actually a cemetery there if you know this area well. There's a cemetery right there at the intersection of Overton and Crosshaven. And you come up that hill and there's kind of a round building that you can see the roof of right at the bottom of your screen. And that is Cahaba Heights Baptist Church. Right next to it's the Publix. So just kind of give you an orientation of where we are. If you jumped over 2 or 3 blocks to the right of this map, you'd be on 459 where it crosses the Cahaba River. So we're not too far from the summit here. We're not too far from Liberty Park. That's sort of the area where we are, which means that there are several different police departments who could help respond to this. And tonight they have sadly had to do that to try and figure out what is going on inside that terrible, terrible tragedy that unfolded inside the church tonight. And then there's our first live picture of the actual St. Stephen's Episcopal Church sign in the building where this all unfolded. And it looks like a Jefferson County Sheriff's Unit is handling traffic there. This, by the way, at this time of night, Sarah, would be a busy intersection, especially if school is in session. You have a lot of youth sports going on, and as you see traffic blocked off from going into that area, going into, I think that's Crosshaven. So if you're in that stretch of road, just do not expect to get through there very easily and try to avoid it if you can. In fact, Mountain Brook Police tweeting out tonight, asking folks to avoid that area if they can.
Understandably, and you can see why. You can see an officer there directing traffic. Doesn't look like they're letting anybody down on Crosshaven Drive there. So if you live in that neighborhood or you know somebody in that area, of course, let them know that they won't be able to get through.
Okay, so we don't know much. What we do know came from Vestavia Hills Police Captain Shane Ware minutes ago, and this is what he shared with us.
Multiple police and fire departments responded to the scene, and at the time I'm able to confirm to you that we have multiple people that have been shot. The suspect is in custody. The scene is still being actively worked.
And that is all we know at this point.
That's right. That's all Shane Ware was able to tell us. Obviously, this is a situation we talked about that they have trained a lot for, but training is one thing, and walking into a building where there has been an active shooter in a church setting is something completely different. And so having to try and sort of, you and I both have friends in the law enforcement community around here that have to sort of be able to make that switch into professional mode. Kind of like we do when we're down in the newsroom, when we're chatting and whatever, and then something like this happens. You have to switch into professional mode, and so that's what these folks are doing right now, doing what they're trained to do, and that's why training is so important, because at times like these, you can't let emotions take over. You've got a job to do, no matter how hard that job may be. It's important.
That's right, and they are doing their job. They are keeping people away from the scene. That's what they do to protect the evidence. They've got to go through each room and collect evidence, and that's how they do that. And also, Jonathan, as you're watching this, I can't help but think about a number of churches that are looking at this situation. Churches have security plans now. That's the day and age that we live in now, and they are reviewing their plans probably right now.
Well, and Sarah, you know, this is a situation where I know we both attend churches, different churches on Sunday mornings, but each of our churches have security officers there. You have off-duty police officers who roam around the halls, and I remember the first time that I was volunteering in preschool ministry, and you round the corner and you see an officer in uniform. I'm getting chills just talking about it, because it's like, why do you have to be here? Why do we need this? But it is so obvious on situations like this, where having the security plans in place, having folks wearing the earpieces on Sunday morning and Wednesday nights, and whenever we all gather for churches at our respective places, it's just become a part. Now, honestly, you almost don't notice them, because it is so, I hate to use the term normal, but it is so expected now to have that presence at a church building.
It is so unfortunate that this is the times that we are living in. We're talking about grocery stores, we're talking about schools, churches. soft areas that they're talking about. And you have to be so alert, and you have to have security.
Because who shows up to, and again, we don't know that this unfolded at this potluck tonight. We keep referring to that because that's the only event on the church schedule tonight. It's a Thursday night. It would be a normal Wednesday night service or anything like that. So if indeed it was this potluck where this began to unfold, you know, you show up with a covered dish, right? You show up with a casserole more than likely, and one of those Pyrex glass rectangular containers we're also familiar with, or maybe it's Tupperware. And you set it out and you get ready just to have a good time, right? Boomer's Potluck, you would assume it's more of some of our senior citizen folks just gathering for a Thursday night fellowship, getting out, seeing each other and talking about how the Braves are on a 14-game winning streak, or how the grandkids did in baseball, or whatever else. You're not expecting to have to defend yourself against gunfire in a setting like that, and that's what makes this so awfully difficult to process.
Or have to duck and take cover. We're getting a look now. I'm not sure where this is.
This is, I think, the parking lot where we had that briefing earlier,
Yes.
which is just up the street from the church, I believe. Yeah, that's what we're being told.
But you saw a large police presence there. It's still a very active scene there on Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills, outside the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. Again, we were saying that they had on the schedule a potluck dinner that was supposed to go from 5 until 7 tonight.
And again, we expect to get a briefing from Vestavia Hills Police by about the top of the hour. So some 28 minutes or so away. We were promised more information at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock. So the hope is obviously that we will get some more information from them at that point about exactly how many people were shot. We're trying to reach out to the diocese office as well to get some information from them about what they're learning about what happened inside. This, by the way, for folks who are unfamiliar with the church as well, we were just looking at their clergy. It's the Reverend John Burris, who is the rector there, a couple of other folks who are on staff at St. Stephen's Episcopal there in Cahaba Heights. So hopefully we can get some information from them, what they may know about what unfolded inside their building.
So that is the look at what you are seeing there. That is kind of what is happening there at St. Stephen's outside that church on Crosshaven. You can see a large police presence, some marked vehicles and some unmarked vehicles, but what they all have in common is those flashing lights, and there are a lot of people there responding to this emergency.
Want to just reset for our folks who may just be joining us on our WBRC News app, our streaming platforms, Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, are certainly watching on our website or our social media channels around the country and across the world in some cases. We are covering an active shooting at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, Crosshaven Drive. It's in the Cahaba Heights section of Vestavia Hills, just down the street from a couple of other churches, just around the corner from a Publix, where tonight's scheduled to be a Boomer's Potluck from 5 to 7. And in that time frame, around 6:25, we begin to hear traffic on the scanners of a active shooter event inside this church. And Vestavia Hills Police now confirmed there was an active shooter inside St. Stephen's Church, with multiple victims and with the shooter now in custody. And that is about what we have confirmed to this point.
Let's go to our Jen Horton, who is at Grandview Medical Center. Jen, what have you learned there?
Sarah and Jonathan, we're still trying to gather information, work the phones, try to reach out to our sources. I can tell you it's fairly quiet here at Grandview, aside from an ambulance that came and left with lights and sirens going, headed back toward the summit, down 280, headed west. That's really all that we've seen here. We've reached out to the public information officer at Grandview. We've spoken to a couple of surgeons and nurses, trying to determine what level they may be at inside the hospital, attempting to either respond to some of these injuries or how they're able to receive some of the people who may be potentially injured. I can tell you when I left Red Mountain about 6:30 today, I met multiple ambulances with lights and sirens going down 280 toward downtown. So it's unclear exactly where these victims were taken, the extent of their injuries. It's something we're all really waiting to hear and see. At the same rate, it's something that we will typically have a difficult time getting our hands on in terms of information because of so many health privacy laws. But I just put the distance in the map just here. It's about 3.5–4 miles from that church to Grandview. So an obvious choice in terms of trying to get someone the medical help that they need after an incident like this. So we're waiting to get information. I've been speaking to my sources, the federal agents and so forth. Just like it's an all hands on deck situation for us, I can tell you that multiple levels of law enforcement are there on the scene. This is gaining the attention of the state and the region. It's something that everyone's waiting to hear a little bit more about as we heard just a little bit from Shane Ware with Vestavia Hills Police, you know, your mind starts to go through all the questions that you have. And he left us with a lot of questions, but we're here hoping that we can get some good news from some of these victims if they are being treated here at Grandview. But so far, no real confirmation that any victims have been transported here, and if so, what their conditions are. Sarah and Jonathan.
All right, Jen, thanks so much. Just saw from Steve Crocker, he says a member of the diocese reports that the bishop, the Right Reverend Glenda Curry, is on site caring for staff and parishioners there. So some of the church diocese, the Episcopal diocese, has come to respond, as well as we have. Of course, it makes total sense. They have come to respond to the needs of their staff and parishioners. Obviously, those who are not hurt physically certainly have a lot of emotional needs to deal with tonight.
Definitely. My heart goes out to, our hearts go out to the family members who have people who may be affected by this. You heard police say that multiple people were shot. That means your mind is going all kinds of directions, not knowing if that's your loved one who's been impacted. And we're sorry we can't give you any more peace of mind. This is all that we know right now.
For those of you who may be sort of having a tickle in the back of your mind saying St. Stephen's Episcopal, that sounds familiar for some reason. Well, this may be it. In a night of obviously trying to connect all these different pieces. This is actually the church that was famous for just a minute or so in 2005 when the actress Courtney Cox, a Mount Brook native, actually had her 10-month-old daughter Coco was baptized at St. Stephen's Church. Some of her castmates from Friends flew in for the event. It's kind of a big deal around here. So if you were in Birmingham in 2005, remember that whole hubbub? That was at this church, St. Stephen's Church, where this shooting has unfolded tonight, obviously. So this is a situation where the diocese staff has come in to try and take care of the parishioners and the staff there. It could be some of the staff are among those hurt. We just simply don't know yet, Sarah. We just know there are multiple people who were shot.
Whatever we know, it was just an awful situation there for those who were there in attendance. We know that there was a potluck dinner that was scheduled from 5 until 7 there at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. We don't know the extent or where the actual shooting happened, but that's what we know that was on schedule. But you can see a large response from firefighters, paramedics, and police from different departments, different municipalities.
And you know, Jen was mentioning, and I think this is a good point to make, the federal resources that come to play in a situation like this as well. We have the FBI office in the only FBI field office in anywhere around here is in downtown Birmingham, not too far. Lots of expertise there, unfortunately, in dealing with situations like this. The ATF has a presence here. So you have a lot of folks who have training, not just on the local level, but the federal level, to try and help in these situations. And that doesn't, of course, help necessarily at the first response. You got to get guys and gals with guns in to stop the shooter. But in trying to sort of trace back everything, how did we get to this point? What led up to this tragedy tonight? Whatever it is, those federal resources will be of great help in trying to sort of pick at the threads of this investigation and try and trace back how we got to this point.
Just think about what we've all been through, the lockdown with COVID-19, people starting to get more familiar again with going to church, being with loved ones there, being with church members. And so this is the last thing that anyone would ever expect. And we know my church, I know your church, we all have churches that have security plans in place for such a thing as this. Nobody expects it to happen, but many churches are prepared, and sadly, it has come to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church.
And that is, of course, where we will have the focus of our attention. Perhaps in about, we are told, 20 minutes or so, we may have an update from Vestavia Hills Police. Again, it was just so very little that they were able to give us when they reached us for the first time about 7:10 or so tonight. That was simply to just confirm that there had been an active shooter inside the church. There were multiple people shot, and that the shooter or the suspect was in custody. That is all we were able to get from them. So hopefully when they join us again, maybe at the top of the hour. And of course, as you know, Sarah, these timelines can be fluid in this situation. Hopefully we'll get some more information.
All right, let's go to our Catherine Patterson from the First Alert Desk there in the newsroom.
Yeah, Sarah and Jonathan, I've been looking on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, a lot of people saying that they or their loved ones go to this church, St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, or that their kids went to day school there, sharing their concerns, their thoughts, and their prayers for everyone involved. As we know, the suspected shooter is in custody, and I know that that means that the threat, the active threat, is really no longer a concern, but that really doesn't bring a lot of comfort to all of us here in the Vestavia Crosshaven, Birmingham area if we have family members who are at this church or were there tonight for that potluck event. Vestavia Hills Police just posting on their Facebook page within the last 6 minutes an update to let people who follow them on social media that there was an active shooter at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. This is on the 3700 block of Crosshaven Drive. Multiple law enforcement agencies, fire departments responding. We got pictures in from our crews. Vestavia Hills, Mountain Brook, Hoover, multiple law enforcement agencies coming in to assist. And of course, Vestavia Hills Police confirming multiple people were shot. Again, no word yet on the conditions of these victims right now. We do know the suspect is in custody. We should be getting an update in less than 20 minutes from police. But again, here's just to give you a little orientation of where this church is. Right here at the top of your screen, that is where St. Stephen's Episcopal Church is. It is on Crosshaven Drive, right where Overton and Crosshaven Drive meet. Again, this is 280 Whole Foods Market over here. And this is 459. So if you're getting your bearings right here, this is the summit. So in a really, residential area, St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. So here's just zooming in a bit. We have multiple crews on the scene right now working to get more information. But as Vestavia Hills Police did provide us with just a few details of multiple victims and the shooter, the suspected shooter in custody, we're still hoping to get some more information on the condition of those victims coming up tonight at 8 o'clock, guys.
All right, Kathy, thanks so much. Again, it's an all-hands-on-deck approach tonight for law enforcement. It's an all-hands-on-deck approach, of course, for us. So we're moving our Jen Horton from Grandview down to UAB, where we believe some victims may be taken, may have been taken, depending upon their condition. And I think we're looking right down the hill. I think we're actually close to Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, if I'm not mistaken here, Sarah. To the left is that church parking lot where we had the briefing earlier. That cemetery I was referring to, I believe, is just down the hill there. And then across the street would be where the church actually is, across Overton onto Crosshaven and down a little ways, or up a little ways, I should say, would be where you would actually see the St. Stephen's Church sign that we saw earlier. So if you were looking down, that's a busy intersection of Overton and Crosshaven right there. We see all the flashing lights and the traffic is being diverted away. They're not letting traffic continue up Crosshaven because that, of course, is where we believe the shooting took place tonight and where there have been multiple victims shot. Again, what we're waiting for is their condition.
Yeah, Vestavia Police asking people not to go in that area to allow them to continue their investigation. As you mentioned, we are hoping for, or police telling us that they're going to give us a briefing at the top of the hour. And for people and families who have people from this church or have loved ones here, it has to feel like a lifetime before they get more information. For
sure. And Sarah, I want to sort of button up a little confusion we have had earlier. The briefing happened in the church parking lot. Of course, it was the Baptist church. It was the Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, not the St. Stephen's Church parking lot where that briefing took place. So we are got a little wires a little across about where that was, but just to clear that up earlier, that's where this briefing was taking place, not actually in the church parking lot. As you can see, we're being kept far away from that scene, so we just don't know what's unfolding there, obviously. It does not look like you're having a ton of activity right now in terms of getting folks in or out of that area. It looks like Lauren Harkson may be ready to talk to a couple of folks here in just a second. We'll get to her as soon as they're ready about what they may have seen or heard in that area. Obviously, a lot of people beginning to respond to this part tonight when you see this going on. Again, what we don't know is what happened inside that church tonight when there was supposed to be a potluck going on from 5 to 7.
We know church leaders are there trying to comfort those people who may have witnessed what happened there. As you might imagine, a very traumatic situation for them as well. A large police presence still there on Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills outside the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church.
I believe we'll get to Lauren Harkson in a second. We have our Chastity Maxey's also we have yet to hear from live, but she is in the area trying to talk to some folks, parishioners maybe, who have flocked to the church to find out what's going on. Certainly to be concerned about what may have happened to folks inside there. And our Steve Crocker, as you were saying, sir, just a moment ago, was reporting that the diocese staff says the bishop, who is the Right Reverend Glenda Curry, is on site caring for staff and parishioners. Again, I don't know if that site is St. Stephen's itself or perhaps the staging area at the Cahaba Heights Baptist Church. We talked about how law enforcement is responding. All different departments are responding together. I would expect the community of faith in Birmingham, which is significant, and obviously in this area, these churches are neighbors. You would expect that those churches in this area are going to respond with some help for this church, whatever the needs may be in the coming days. Obviously, for folks who, even if they have escaped being shot, obviously there's all kinds of counseling and a lot to process if you were in that room or in that building tonight when the gunfire erupted, or if you just knew somebody who was.
It's just very sad as you think about the times that we're living in right now, that we even have to talk about a shooting at a church. There used to be a time when you felt like a church was hallowed ground. People would just not cross that line, and we are living in different times.
Let's go to Lauren Harkson, who was there with a couple of folks who may have seen or know something about what went on there. Lauren.
Yeah, that's right. We are right across the street from Cahaba Heights Baptist Church. I just spoke with two men who actually live and work in the area, and they saw a lot of the sirens. So actually, I'm going to have the camera come right over to them. So right now, this is Kyle Mitchell. Kyle, tell me what you know, what you saw.
Just hearing the sirens, just trying to figure out what's going on. A lot of chaos, just trying to figure out what's going on.
And you live in the area?
I do, that's correct.
Does this happen a lot here?
It does not, no.
Were you surprised to see all the sirens and all the different agencies?
Very, very surprised.
And then we also have Crawford Hoke over here, and he's actually been to the church several times. So Crawford, first talk to me about your experience. I know you were about to go into the pool.
Yes, it was a hot day, so we're about to go swimming, and I work at Creative Dog Training, and we heard multiple sirens going in spurts of 3, 4, 5, and then the silence, and then 3, 4, 5. And he picked me up at work to go swimming, and we got behind the first ambulance that was heading towards Grandview. And I've lived in Breckenridge Apartments for 3 years, and with all the mass shootings going on, this is like a micro 9/11 to me. I mean, this hits close to home, and I don't understand why people do this, and it just needs to be addressed, but nobody has the answers.
And I understand you told me you've actually been to the church several times.
Correct. I attended Sunday evening services with my mother and stepfather several times, and it's a great church, great people, and it just breaks my heart that something like this would happen so close to home.
And I know there's a lot of people, just watching at home trying to learn information, and we are too. I mean, tell me why you decided to come out here and kind of check it all out.
Well, we kept hearing ambulances arrive, and we turned on the news. We saw you, and we just decided we're on foot, we didn't want to block traffic. So we just walked down, and I'm still aghast at just the scene, the lights, Hoover, Mountain Brook, Vestavia, and just I'm glad they got the guy. The suspect's in custody is what I've heard, but this really hits close to home, and I wish I had a solution, but I don't.
Thank you both so much. We appreciate y'all talking to us, of course. If you're just joining us, we've heard from Vestavia Hills Captain Shane Ware. They got the active shooting call around 6:22. As of now, they know that there were multiple people shot. We don't have a number. We don't know how exactly they're doing at this point, but we are supposed to get some updated information around 8 o'clock, so that's in about 10 minutes. So you'll want to stick with us. And of course, we'll just be bringing you the latest on air and online. Live in Cahaba Heights, Lauren Harkson, WBRC Fox 6 News on your side.
Lauren, thanks. Interesting to get perspective there from a gentleman who has been inside that building for services. He said he's been with his parents before and said it's just hard to reconcile something like this happening here. And I do think, Sarah, that's a feeling sometimes we get as we cover stories like this that happen other parts of the country.
Definitely.
You just go, gosh, could that happen here? And I think it's just human nature, a sort of a defense mechanism to say, well, that can't happen around me. That can't happen at my workplace or my place of worship or God forbid, my place where my kids go to school. And tonight it has touched our community. It has touched Cahaba Heights, specifically Vestavia Hills and the St. Stephen's Church, where I'm sure folks, again, did not show up tonight to that building for whatever purpose they were there, expecting anything like this.
And what we know right now is that there are multiple people shot, according to the police there, Captain Shane Ware. They will give us another update in about 10 minutes. But it would be the longest 10 minutes for those folks who have family who were in attendance there at that church tonight at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. What we know on the schedule tonight, a potluck dinner, as we were talking about. You know, your defenses are down.
Yeah.
You're there to have fun. You're there to just be with your church members that you haven't seen in a long time, and now.
And this happens, and gunfire rings out. We know it rang out inside that church building, perhaps in the parish hall where this was scheduled to take place. And again, speaking of schedules, we are just waiting for fresh information. That's why we have our crews out there trying to get you every little bit of information that we can, because we know you are obviously so concerned, as everybody is, focused on what may have happened inside that building. And what we are learning so far is obviously tragic, but we just don't know the extent of it. So that's what we hope to get more of a sense of coming up here at the top of the hour. Obviously, now that this has been more than an hour since this happened, Sarah, anybody who was hurt has gotten some medical attention, we hope. Obviously, they're not in that building anymore. They're at a hospital. Our Jen Horton was at Grandview earlier. She's heading to UAB now, where they may be getting some treatment. Obviously, they have access to some of the best care in the world when it comes to dealing, sadly, with gunfire. It's something that our area is just way too familiar with.
And you hate to say this, but the church now is a crime scene. Police are there going over the area, going through those rooms at the church, collecting evidence, establishing a case against the suspect, who they say is in custody right now. We don't know the ages of the people. We don't know male or female. We have very little information on the multiple people shot, but we do know we will have more information, hopefully, at the top of the hour.
And of course, once what begins, this investigation starts to take a bunch of different tracks all at once. As you said, you have a complicated crime scene that is a church building, that you have to process all the physical evidence there. You have to interview everybody who was in the room or in the building to see what they saw, how this unfolded, where did the suspect come from. And then, of course, you start to interview the suspect, who they say they have in custody, which would, of course, indicate that suspect is alive, and start to try and figure out what motivated them to come into this building tonight and to begin firing. And did they have a connection to the church in some way? Did they have a connection to folks who were in the building? You know, oftentimes, and this is unfortunately a sad reality, sometimes a personal conflict spills over into a completely different setting, right? Was this something between the suspected shooter and an individual who just happened to be there? Or was this someone who was targeting this particular gathering for a specific reason? Just all questions that investigators obviously are going to try and answer, but those answers are going to be a long time coming, and really there's what possible answer is ever going to be given that will make any sense to anybody.
And to echo the sentiments of the gentleman that Lauren just talked to, we're looking for a solution. We hope to have a solution, but we don't have a solution to why people take their guns out and shoot other people in a public protected area like a church, like a school, like a grocery store.
We mentioned medical care. I want to pass along from our Jen Horton, who is in touch with Grandview Medical Center, who says they do not believe they have any of the victims from the shooting in their care at this time. So we do not think any of those victims have been taken to Grandview. If they are being taken somewhere for treatment, perhaps it is UAB, as we said, well equipped, well versed in the care of folks who have been shot, and so that is that's something that they're well versed in, and obviously may be taking advantage of that expertise.
Our live crews there giving you a number of vantage points from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, giving you an idea of what the scene is like there. You can see it is still a very active scene. Several agencies there on the scenes, sheriff's departments, police departments from different municipalities. The fire crews were also there with their paramedics teams there as well to aid anyone who needed it.
And obviously, you know, the way that first responders have evolved in how they respond to situations like this is that you sort of rush everything there, right? I mean, firefighters respond to cardiac calls now, right? Everybody sort of goes to everything, which was not always the case. But as law enforcement has evolved and as their training has advanced and as we've gotten more resources and technology, they just throw so much at this. And so in a situation like this, you see, I mean, just in this picture, right, we've got Mountain Brook Police, we've got Sheriff's Department vehicles, we have got Vestavia Hills Police back there, and you've got, as you said, firefighters and paramedics who have a lot of training in triage and stopping bleeding and tying up traumatic wounds, all things that they are well versed in. So that's obviously, again, we're the beneficiaries of so much of this training, and sadly, every time something like this happens, the hope is that we learn something about how to prevent the next one from happening, or how to respond to the next one, or even how to make the next one less violent or less damaging in some way. So, there's always something to be learned from these situations. And that's what we're hoping is from this situation, that something can be learned to make other churches and places of worship safe. Again, just a crazy thing that you have to consider, but one that is unfortunately a reality of our life these days.
And that is training that our first responders get statewide, so that when they show up on the scene, they're bringing their expertise. They're coming from across the municipality, so that when they get on the scene, they're able to just jump right in and know exactly what to do. And every time you talk to first responders, they say, we train, we train, we train. We hope not to have to use it, but tonight they are having to use that training.
Our Lauren Harkson just a moment ago talking to someone who lives in the area, who heard the sirens, who saw our coverage and came out to get a look firsthand, and who has been inside that St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. Let's take a listen.
And we heard multiple sirens going in spurts of 3, 4, 5, and then the silence, and then 3, 4, 5. And he picked me up at work to go swimming, and we got behind the first ambulance that was heading towards Grandview. Correct. I attended Sunday evening services with my mother and stepfather several times, and it's a great church, great people, and it just breaks my heart that something like this would happen so close to home.
And that is certainly the feeling of neighbors tonight. This is, it's not just this community of faith that's been affected now, it is the peace, it is the relative feeling of safety that folks who live in this area, as we've been pointing out to you, this church is nestled in a very residential area, lots of homes just right behind that building. And certainly that sense of peace tonight, whether they heard the gunfire or just heard the sirens coming. Imagine if you're home tonight, it's about dinner time, it's 6:25, mom and dad got home from work, kids are coming in from playing outside, sit down to some macaroni and hot dogs, and all of a sudden you hear sirens going off at the church right behind your house. And what could be going through your mind now, and what's going to go through your mind every time you hear a siren for the next days and weeks ahead.
Definitely, or you're coming home from work and you can't get into your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You can't go home because that area is blocked off by that heavy police presence that is all around that perimeter there.
You can talk about the sort of ripple effect, and again, as for our viewers, we're waiting at the top of the hour to get, we hope, some updated information from Vestavia Hills Police responding to this shooting of multiple people inside St. Stephen's Church. But the ripple effect, Sarah, is, let's say there was 20 people at this potluck tonight, or this event where this unfolded. Every one of those folks has 20, 30, 50, 100 people in their lives who care about them, and some of whom knew they were there or going to hear that so-and-so was there and want to know, were they one of the ones shot? And at this point, very few people know the answer to that. So there's just a lot of uncertainty in a lot of families tonight, not just here in Birmingham, but across the country, certainly folks who know folks who work at this church or who were attending this tonight, see this flash across social media, across television, across the country tonight as folks are tuning into the coverage and wondering, do I know someone who was there, or is it someone that I know was there? Are they okay?
You're talking about the neighbors hearing those sirens. This was the scene that they witnessed earlier today. Around 6:22 is when we first got that first call about an active shooter at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. This is on Crosshaven Drive in Vestavia Hills. And as we've been saying, multiple agencies responding and showing up there to help. And what we learned is that, again, multiple people shot. We don't know a number. We don't know the ages. We don't know if it's a man or woman, child. We don't know any of that information at this point.
And just sort of playing in the backdrop of all this here, again, as you begin to see this story as making national news and getting some international attention at this point, is the negotiations unfolding in Congress right now over questions around guns and mental health and guns and safety and all those questions that to which so many people have some very strong viewpoints. And obviously this unfolds tonight against that backdrop of some significant action on that front in Congress, at least in the Senate to this point. Don't know what form that's going to take. Nothing official or final yet. But it is, many people believe, the series of shootings we have had in what people would consider soft targets, Uvalde, the Robb Elementary School, the supermarket in your hometown of Buffalo, that sort of spurred some rethinking of those issues, or mental health questions, gun issues as well. That's kind of spurred this conversation, and you wonder if this incident, sadly, will become part of that conversation as well.
Yeah, and we get it. You know, my husband is a gun owner. There's lots of gun owners. My husband is a hunter. We understand the right to carry a weapon, and so that debate goes on and on and on, where that right to carry a weapon and have it with you at all times, and the right to bring it in and take away someone else's freedoms is just that debate that's going on right now.
Right, and certainly folks have very passionate opinions on both sides of it. Some folks would say if there are parishioners in there tonight that were armed or are armed, maybe that would have helped, maybe it did help stop this. Again, just a lot of questions unfolding inside there. We don't want to get too much into that because we simply don't know much about what unfolded in there at all. And so we want to be as transparent as we can about that, folks. We're just trying to kind of go through this with you as we all hold our collective breath, waiting to hear, hopefully here in the next minute or two, from Vestavia Hills Police about what has happened inside this church. Let's give you again just a sort of a geographic reference for those of you joining us around the country, perhaps on Local News Live across our great television network. Certainly here in Birmingham, if you're not familiar with the Cahaba Heights area, that is where St. Stephen's Episcopal Church is, right up Crosshaven Drive from the Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, which is that round building right at the bottom of your screen there. The Publix parking lot is right next to that church, right next to the Baptist Church. And then right across from St. Stephen's, down the road a little bit to the south of our map would be the new Chick-fil-A there, 459 off to the right. But Sarah, as you're saying, there's a lot of homes just behind that campus there. You look kind of behind there as Overton Road continues on the other side of Overton, several subdivisions, several homes, newer homes that have been built back there to the left. In fact, my family and I were just in this area going to a McCollum Park this weekend for an event. So it's an area familiar to a lot of our viewers, and if you don't live in Metro Birmingham, you may not know this area well. We just want to give you a sort of a sense of where this is.
So what we know what was on the schedule there at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church was a potluck dinner that was scheduled from 5 to 7 p.m. tonight. According to the website, this happens every third Thursday of the month. This is something that parishioners probably looked very forward to going. You have that person that can really cook, you know, they have the best macaroni and cheese.
I bet you're one of those folks.
Well, we try.
Yeah.
But all of that being shattered tonight, their peace, as you said, being shattered by gun violence here, an active shooter at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church.
Let's give you a live look at where we expect to hear from Vestavia Hills Police in just a moment. They have set up the location there. This is in the church parking lot of Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, just up Crosshaven Drive, across Overton and up the hill, basically, from where this shooting took place. Again, lots of questions we know they're on your mind too. First of all, how are the victims doing? How many of them are there? What happened here? Why did this happen? And what do we know about the suspect? I bet you're not going to get very much about the suspect, but hopefully we will get some information about how many folks were hurt in this and how they are doing. So that's where they're set up for that briefing. Again, we'll bring it to you live as soon as it happens, and we expect it to happen sometime in the next, hopefully, 5 to 10 minutes.
Hopefully, when information comes and police have more to do in their investigation, a lot of times they want to check their list and check it twice before they come and give us the information. They want to be as accurate as well, so we will give them that grace and allow them to gather their information. The church right now, no one being allowed in or out of that church right now because it is now a crime scene. Investigators are going through that church, collecting evidence, trying to put the pieces together of what happened, when, how, and all those things we were talking about.
We talk about this news beginning to spread around the country and around the world, and my thoughts go halfway around the world to Greece tonight, where according to the church's Facebook page, there are some members who are on a trip right now in Athens and Corinth, retracing the steps of the Apostle Paul in Acts. And they have some beautiful pictures on their Facebook page today. That was the last post from the church's account. About 10 hours ago, they said, our pilgrims have begun their journey following in the footsteps of Paul. Looks like they were at the Acropolis today. So you have this trip of a lifetime. And for them, many of them are probably in bed tonight, given the time change, asleep perhaps, and being awoken by frantic phone calls or text messages, or they will wake up in the morning to find all these headlines about what happened at their home church. And of course, their great concern will be for those fellow parishioners and staff perhaps as well who may have been there tonight and what is going on. So you feel for those folks who are going to feel so far removed tonight as they wake up to this news half a world away in Greece sometime overnight or in the morning.
We're monitoring the situation there. You can see the briefing area there at the Cahaba Baptist Church there, not far from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church where that active shooter situation happened. Authorities telling us that they would give us a briefing at the top of the hour. It is 5 minutes past. We're giving them that information, that grace to get as much information as they can. I know they want to be as thorough because they know that people are anxious to know what's going on.
Right. There, you know, in a vacuum like this, there's just so little information and there is so much desire for knowing what exactly is unfolding inside that church. And that is obviously why we are hopeful that I think it's Captain Shane Ware from the Vestavia Hills Police will be coming to speak to us very soon. There, as you see, we're in the parking lot of the Cahaba Heights Baptist Church to give us an update. And again, we were told the top of the hour, and we're pretty close to that. And you said grace there is something I think everybody's going to need both tonight and in the days ahead, certainly.
And we know that the church there, the diocese, sending and dispatching some of their members to help those folks who were inside the church at the time, witnessing what had to be a traumatic situation for them. You just don't get over that in an instant. No.
The Right Reverend Glenda Curry is the bishop of the diocese, and we're told is on site trying to care for her staff and parishioners. So that's what we know about the response from the diocese. We've reached out to the diocese, just to be transparent with you, asking if they have someone they can make available to talk about how they're going to respond to this. And obviously, we're not their first concern. We shouldn't be. But at some point, we hope to hear from them as to how they plan to respond to this and the resources they're providing to their parishioners, of course, which is significant. I'm reminded, by the way, in this situation, as we watch so many agencies respond, that the mayor of Vestavia Hills, Ashley Curry, is himself a former FBI agent, a retired FBI agent. So he obviously has access to a lot of federal resources. They would anyway. If Vestavia Hills in a situation like this would be asking for help, but certainly his connections may prove especially helpful tonight. Ashley Curry, the Vestavia Hills mayor, who is a retired FBI agent and has access to some of that extra expertise as well. We expect to you'd probably see ATF respond to this. You'd probably see the FBI respond to this. And as we have seen, so many local departments have come in to try and help, whether it's traffic control, as you see there, blocking off the roads, whether it's first responders, paramedics to try and help the victims. And as we said, just initially, we will know at some point who helped neutralize the threat. May have been a Vestavia officer, it may have been a couple of different officers from different departments, just getting in as fast as they can and stopping the shooting. That is always the primary concern. It used to be, let's contain this thing and then work our way in. Now all the training is rally up and go, and that's what we assume they did tonight. Getting that training, going in, neutralizing the threat, as you said, going room to make sure there is no additional threat. That is what we know across the board in terms of active shooter training, at least in that we've seen across the board. We reached out to UAB Hospital as well. They're just telling us via email here that they are gathering information and waiting for law enforcement to release more. Join the party. There's that describes so many of us, all of us watching this story. But again, we appreciate UAB giving us that little bit of information. Again, we thought that could be where some of the victims might be taken, given the expertise that they have there. And we know Grandview has told us they do not believe they have anyone there. Grandview probably a little closer geographically. But we know that UAB is a level 1 trauma center. There's a couple of those in Birmingham that has a lot of experience with gun violence, and so there may be some of the victim there. Our Jen Horton's on her way there as we speak. We're going to let you listen again to Captain Shane Ware of the Vestavia Hills Police on the briefing that he gave earlier. Here's a listen.
Multiple police and fire departments responded to the scene. And at the time, I'm able to confirm to you that we have multiple people that have been shot. The suspect is in custody. The scene is still being actively worked.
Oh my goodness, so loved ones hearing that report from Captain Shane Ware, having loved ones who are at that facility, at that church at the time, hearing multiple people shot, no more information. Their heart must be in their hand right now. And you heard Captain Ware very, very measured in his tone and in what he's saying, and that is his training as well, because in situations like this, everybody is going to be very hyper-vigilant, very emotional, and the last thing you need is to sort of
fan those flames unnecessarily or to prevent or to cause any unnecessary panic or concern. So obviously very measured in what they're going to tell us. He even said it, I mean, that press conference lasted for all of 25 seconds, and he said, I cannot take any questions, so don't even bother with that. I can only release a little bit of information. And that was the bare minimum, but we did know at that point about 7:05 or 7:10 that the active threat was over, and that is the good news as our team coverage continues on what has been already a shocking night, no matter what we learn here in the next few minutes.
That's right. Authorities right now taking their time to get as much information as they possibly can to be as accurate as they can, because once they step in front of those microphones, they know that that we will be asking questions, and they want to be able to answer those questions so that we can give you the most accurate information there.
We would certainly hope to also hear from Jen at some point at UAB. I know we're trying to get her in place there to see whether or not there have been victims taken to UAB. Obviously, that would be a place that has a lot of expertise in helping these folks. We're told Captain Weir may be on the way to this briefing location soon, so we'll see if we're about ready to get you some information. But again, we were told top of the hour, it's 8:10, so hopefully sometime soon. And obviously, they're trying to get everything together to figure out what they can release. And given the hour, Sarah, this could be the last time we hear from law enforcement tonight.
Very much so. And you're getting now an accurate look of what the scene looks like since the sun has gone down. Still a very, very active scene there outside St. Stephen's Episcopal Church on Crosshaven Drive.
So again, we hope Vestavia Hills Police will be able to give us some more insight, especially into the folks inside. Of course, we just don't know very much other than that there have been more than one person shot inside St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, maybe at this Boomers potluck that was scheduled to happen in Parish Hall tonight. We know the diocese has responded by sending the Right Reverend Glenda Curry to take care of the folks there, the parishioners and staff who have been affected by this. We're just getting the 3-minute heads up, by the way, so about 3 minutes until we hear from Captain Weir is what we're being told by our crew on the scene. They're responding to this, as well as all kinds of federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, to try and piece together what happened in there tonight and to take care of those victims. So obviously our thoughts, our prayers are with anybody who had family members or friends inside the church tonight, and you're wondering what's going on. We are too, and we're doing our level best as a team. Our folks in the newsroom, our folks on site there to try and get you those answers.
Yeah, you can look at the scene there and you can see the tape around there. Police have a very wide perimeter around the scene here, no one being allowed in there near that church. Our cameras there set up at the Cahaba Baptist Church, a length away from where that is happening for this briefing that will happen from the Vestavia Hills Police Department.
Here's Captain Weir.
Okay. My name is Captain Shane Ware with the Vestavia Hills Police Department. I would like to start by recapping the briefing that I gave to you an hour or so ago. At about 6:22 this evening, the Vestavia Hills Police Department was dispatched to a call of an active shooter located at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, which is at 3775 Crosshaven Drive, Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Multiple law enforcement and multiple fire departments responded to the scene. Initially, during my first briefing, I gave you some preliminary information that I would like to update at this time. As of this time, it has been reported to us that 3 people were shot during the incident inside of the church. 2 of them are currently being treated at a local hospital. And unfortunately, one of the persons that was shot is deceased. I don't have any identifying information that I can provide to you at this time concerning the identities of the victims. Our next scheduled briefing will be after 9 p.m. at this same location. I do want to reiterate to you that the suspect involved in this event is in custody, and that we know of no additional threats to either the community of Vestavia Hills or our neighboring community of Mountain Brook. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the numerous law enforcement and firefighting agencies, both local and federal, that have responded to assist us in our response to this call and to this investigation. That would include the Mountain Brook Police Department, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, the Shelby County Sheriff's Department, the Hoover Police Department, the FBI, the ATF, the U.S. Marshal Service, the Rocky Ridge Fire Department, the Mountain Brook Fire Department, and the Hoover Fire Department. As in the earlier briefing, I'm not going to be able to take questions. And again, I'd like to reiterate that I expect to meet with you again a little bit after 9 p.m. Thank you.
All right, so now we have confirmed, sadly, that there has been one person killed, shot and killed inside St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in the Cahaba Heights section of Vestavia Hills tonight, and 2 other victims who have our prayers right now. They are being treated in a local hospital. We believe that may be UAB. We're pretty sure it's not Grandview. Not certain about that, and they didn't address that. And the suspect is in custody. Sarah, I guess your first thoughts on hearing this?
Oh my goodness, my heart goes out to family members who still don't have an identity. The officer is saying that they're not going to identify those involved in this at this point. So my heart just goes out to all of you who have folks who have been affected. We know that this started at 6:22 as an active shooter situation at St. Stephen's. That's when all those departments started responding, and I started writing down the departments, and it's so many.
I did the same, yeah.
And that is what happens. They are brethren and sisters when anything like this happens. Police departments and fire departments rush to help one another, and that's what we saw today.
We again expect to hear from Vestavia Hills Police now about an hour from now or so, around 9 o'clock at the top of the hour. You can guarantee you'll have that live right here on WBRC, Fox 6, and all of our streaming channels and our social media platforms, as well as our team coverage now into its second hour. Obviously, Sarah, the concern is for those 2 victims who are in the hospital, yes, for the families of everybody who was there who may be scrambling to get information tonight about how their loved one is doing, and that, as you said, is where I think both of our hearts are right now. And also with the folks who are having to work the scene, who are in there trying to process what happened. We do know that, again, the suspect is in custody, and that was the case at 7 o'clock, and that they don't think there's any other threat to the surrounding communities as well. So in that sense, there is some good news that the active threat is over. Of course, the sad news in this is what we had feared, is that there is one person dead who was killed inside St. Stephen's tonight. And now, of course, the question's even more so about what unfolded in those tragic few minutes.
Yeah, we know that there was supposed to be a potluck dinner, as we've been telling you, from 5 to 7 there in the parish hall. That meets every 3rd Thursday of the month. That's what's on the schedule there at the St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. We showed you the scene out there outside the church earlier, and you could see it's still a very active scene. No word yet on how, if you're coming home and you live in that neighborhood, would you be able to get to your home? We don't have that. I'll be anxious to hear from our crew there on the scene if they can get that kind of information from police at all.
Yeah, that's right. We know the diocese has been responding, Sarah, as well. The Episcopal Diocese has sent the Right Reverend Glenda Curry, and now I believe there's another reverend there who's willing to talk to us about the diocese response. Let's go there.
Hi, Jonathan and Sarah. I'm here at the Publix here with Kelly Hudlow now with the Diocese of Alabama. And can you tell us what you know? What have you been hearing so far?
So right now what we know is that folks gathered here at St. Stephen's for a church event this evening, and that someone came in and began shooting. We know that some folks have been hurt, and seriously so. We're kind of like everybody else, we don't have a lot of confirmed information other than that we know that people have been hurt. So we are, here on the scene, talking with the staff, making sure that folks are taken care of and getting as much information as we can. And so it's still kind of a situation of getting more information. We know that the person that did the shooting has been taken into custody, and that the scene is being secured by several different law enforcement agencies that have been working with us and sort of supporting our efforts to help the folks that were inside at the church. This is something that you never expect to happen in your community. This happens in other places, and you just don't think it's going to happen here in the Birmingham area, and so it is shocking. But the one thing that we know is that St. Stephen's as a church is a community that's built on love and prayers and grace, and they're going to come together. But we also know that this community of Vestavia, people of all different faiths, are coming together right now to pray, to send thoughts, to hope for healing for the people that are at the hospital, praying for the law enforcement officers that are here. Part of being the Episcopal Church is St. St. Stephen's isn't alone. It's connected to 80-something other churches here in Alabama, and then we're connected to a network of churches across the world. And so we're getting messages from people from all over the United States and around the world praying for this community tonight. And we'll continue to pray for those that have been hurt, that they have healing, for the doctors and nurses that are tending to them, but also praying for this community that is going to be very shocked and hurt as we learn more information about what happened tonight.
Now, I know that it might be too soon to think ahead to what's happening next, but are there plans for more security going forward at churches across the area?
It is too soon to really sort of begin that conversation. We are people of faith, and so the first thing that we begin with is prayer. And we're going to cover up this community with prayer tonight, both our church and the community of Vestavia in Birmingham. And we're going to come together and find our way through this and figure out what the next steps are. But we start with prayer, and we believe in this community and the love this community has.
What support do you need tonight?
We need everybody out there. Whatever your faith or your belief system is, to pray, to think, to meditate, to just send love to this community, because they're going to need all of it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, we have also heard that there are other churches in the area. St. Luke's is one of those, and they will be in the parking lot here at the Publix on Crosshaven a little bit later to gather here and pray for those victims and also for this community. For now, Chastity Maxey, live in Vestavia Hills, WBRC Fox 6 News on your side.
So much to unpack there, Chastity, about what we heard from the Reverend Kelly Hudlow. A couple of things that just sort of grabbed me, but I want to get to Jen Horton as well, and we'll circle back to perhaps what the Reverend said, because there's a lot to unpack there.
I agree. Let's go to Jen Horton right now at UAB.
We're right outside the ER. We're not seeing any real activity. It seems like any normal Thursday night outside the ER here in downtown Birmingham. But we met with a PIO here for the University Hospital, and they basically told us they're still gathering information. Everyone's kind of an all hands on deck trying to see exactly what happened. I can tell you, I did a story a couple of weeks ago on the trauma team here based on the amount of gun violence that we've had in this city. And over the last couple of years, it's in fact forced UAB to bolster its trauma team. Of course, it's the only level 1 trauma center in the state of Alabama, but they have 2 trauma surgeons on call here at the hospital 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They've had to increase the number of residents, physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, all hands on deck to try to keep this train moving every day. Not only gunshot victims, but people who are hurt in car wrecks. So many of these things that we hear every day. So this is a hospital that is well equipped to handle these sorts of situations. As we understood, again, 2 people who were hurt during this shooting. It's difficult to even begin to surmise the level of their injuries here, but I can tell you there's no major activity outside the UAB ER, just like any other night, but we anticipate the people, if they're here that were involved in that shooting, are inside being treated. Jonathan, Sarah.
All right, Jen Horton for us at UAB, where we believe the victims may have been taken. We were told they weren't at Grandview. Don't know that for sure, but we do know 2 victims who were shot are in a hospital somewhere in the area tonight getting great care.
Let's go back to that interview that Chastity Maxey had with Kelly Hudlow. Oh, all right, let's go to Lauren right now, who's live.
Yeah, that's right. We are right across the street from the Cahaba Heights Baptist Church. Now, that is not the church where this active shooting actually happened. That happened at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, which is about 3-4 blocks down the road. But we just heard from Vestavia Hills, Captain Shane Ware, within the last 10 minutes. So the biggest update that we can bring you right now is they do know that 3 people were shot inside the church. 2 of those people are getting treatment at a local hospital. They didn't specify which hospital that was, but unfortunately 1 person did die. Now, that was the latest information that we have at this point. We are supposed to hear more details around 9 o'clock, so in about 40 minutes. So if you just stay with us on air and online, of course, we will be bringing you the latest. Live in Cahaba Heights, Lauren Harkson, WBRC Fox 6 News, on your side.
All right, Lauren, thanks so much. Sarah, let's go back to what you're saying about what we heard from the Reverend Kelly Hudlow and a couple of quotes that in the newspaper industry, they'd call them pull quotes, right? Things that just sort of stuck out about what she said and how they're responding to this.
Well, first of all, in terms of the the timing of what happened. She said folks were in this event, and we assume that's that potluck dinner.
Right, we think so, in the parish hall.
Because that's what was scheduled, and she said someone just came in and started shooting. That is such an unnerving thing to happen, traumatic thing to happen, and so you understand why there are staff there from the diocese there to help people through what had to be a traumatic event for them. She said they were talking to the staff, but one of the things when Chastity asked her about, security, and she says, we are people of prayer. Our first response is to pray, and inviting the whole community to pray for the folks there at St. Stephen's.
I wrote this, I just tweeted it out. She said, we start with prayer. We're going to cover this in prayer. We need everybody out there, whatever your belief system, to send love, to pray, meditate for this community, because they're going to need it. And I think she was referring not just to the St. Stephen's community of faith, but the Cahaba Heights community, Vestavia Hills, all rocked by what has taken place tonight. Again, one person killed, 2 others shot inside that gathering at the St. Stephen's Church. And she said this is something you never expect to happen in your community. This happens in other places. You don't expect it to happen in the Birmingham community. That was one of her quotes that stuck out to me as well, and something you and I were talking about a few minutes ago.
Oh, most definitely. And she said that they were connected, not just here in Birmingham, but all across the world, and they're getting well wishes and prayers from around the world for St. Stephen's community tonight.
And you mentioned, Sarah, we have not heard from police very much at all about what unfolded, other than that the suspect's in custody and 3 people were shot. What she said was certainly interesting, and we'll see if at 9 o'clock we get some further fleshing out of this from police, but that somebody walked in and started shooting. So was that person unconnected to this gathering? Did they not know anyone there? Was this random in some way? All questions we have that this would seem to indicate could be still the case. We just don't know. But again, and that's based on the very limit, you've got church members. I'm talking to some of our crews here. There's church members and friends in the parking lot of Publix who are texting folks who were inside and how, are you okay? So there's just all kinds of information flowing back and forth, and some of it's accurate, some of it's not, and it's our job to try and just give you what we know. So we'll stay at that home base as limited as it is. But that certainly raises the question that perhaps these folks were just gathered tonight and somebody walked in.
And we talk about the investigation right now. Police are trying to get to the bottom of the when, what, where, and why. They are talking to people who are inside that church, and that has to be done very delicately. If you think about people who have witnessed a very traumatic event, they've got to interview those witnesses there. They have got to go through and collect evidence throughout the church there, or wherever that crime scene is within in the church there. Just a lot that police are trying to make sure that they have the most accurate information they can.
And that's what we are doing as well. Let's give you what we knew, what we learned just now from Captain Shane Ware with the Vestavia Hills Police Department.
3 people were shot during the incident inside of the church. 2 of them are currently being treated at a local hospital. And unfortunately, one of the persons that was shot is deceased.
And that's all we know from Shane Weir. Again, very limited, but he did promise to be back with us again at 9 o'clock tonight, which we weren't sure we'd hear from them again, Sarah. So every hour that passes by, we may learn a little bit more about what unfolded in there. And he mentioned, you talked about all the different agencies, an alphabet soup, if you will, of FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, multiple police departments, multiple fire departments have all responded. He was thanking them for their help, because for us in coverage, for them in responding, it's an all hands on deck.
Mountain Brook Police, Jefferson County, Shelby County, Hoover. You're right, and this is what happens in a situation like this. An emergency on this scale, everybody responds.
Everybody rushes to the scene first to neutralize the shooter, and then to try and figure out what they can do to help those victims. And again, if there's anything to be gained from this, the good news is, of course, that the suspect is in custody and that there is not an active threat of any kind. Of course, everybody's going to want to know why. That's the question that will be on everybody's mind. And the only thing we can do is wait to gather evidence, right? Wait to get information and wait to talk to this suspect who's in custody apparently, and who is alive and perhaps able to answer some questions about what led them, him or her, we don't know, into that building tonight where they were gathered for a church gathering. The diocese says this church gathering. We think it was this potluck tonight in the parish hall when this thing unfolded.
Let's go back to that interview that we did with Kelly Hudlow, who is the Reverend there, who talked to us just a moment ago.
Something that you never expect to happen in your community. You know, this happens in other places, and you just don't think it's going to happen here in the Birmingham area, and so it is shocking. But the one thing that we know is that St. Stephen's as a church is a community that's built on love and prayers and grace, and they're going to come together. But we also know that this community of Vestavia, people of all different faiths, are coming together right now to pray, to send thoughts, to hope for healing for the people that are at the hospital, praying for the law enforcement officers that are here.
And the Reverend Kelly Hudlow there from the Diocese of Alabama. And she talked about that there are 80 Episcopal churches in Alabama in the state, and then of course a wider network around the world. And we mentioned, speaking around the world again, there are some church members from St. Stephen's who appear, at least according to their social media post just from earlier today, to be in Greece tonight on a trip where they are just beginning. I think today was the first day of this trip to trace the journey of the Apostle Paul through Acts and through Corinth and Athens, and they were in front of the Acropolis earlier today. So this church obviously has members around the world who are praying for it tonight.
That's right, and we just showed you the scene outside St. Stephen's Episcopal Church there on Crosshaven Drive, and it's well past nightfall.
Yeah.
This all started at 6:22, where they first got that call. Oh.
And there we go. We talked about covering in prayer. This is in that Publix parking lot tonight where folks have gathered to pray.
Other churches coming to the rescue, so to speak, coming to cover this community in prayer.
I wonder if we could take this picture full, and I'll read as we do, and don't want to interrupt the serenity of this moment other than to read to you a prayer published by the Episcopal Church of the Holy Apostles tonight in response to what is unfolded here. It says, "Dear ones, our prayers are with the people of St. Stephen's and the Diocese of Alabama tonight. We are heartbroken with you, and we are devastated by this terrible act of violence. If you need anything, please reach out to any of us. We are here with and for you." And that is what these folks who have gathered tonight in the parking lot of a Publix there. You can sort of pray anywhere, you can meditate anywhere, you can send good thoughts from anywhere. And tonight they're doing it from the parking lot of a Publix that is just a stone's throw away from where a tragedy has unfolded inside a place of worship. And you see tears on some of these faces tonight. Folks who may or may not have known somebody who goes to that church or was inside that church tonight, who have felt called to gather here and to be a community.
And that church, no doubt, folks there are praying. They believe that love will conquer all, and they are praying for the folks who not only were wounded, the family of that person who was deceased, but also the folks who were inside the building at the time who witnessed what happened, all of that.
I'll tell you, Sarah, this is these scenes are why you have to love living in our community, because this is what folks do.
Exactly
this is how they respond, and this is how we will respond. And they gather together, they circle up with folks they do or don't know, have or have never met, and grab a hand and decide to say a prayer for folks they may or may not know who were sitting inside a potluck hall tonight, expecting to eat a fellowship dinner together, and gunfire rang out and took one of their lives. And so they are gathering tonight. We see more folks approaching the circle. I suspect the circle will expand as the evening goes on. And that's why you have to love living in this community, is because what we're seeing there, that is a picture of community, that circle of folks gathering hands together and expressing good wishes and thoughts. And if you are a person of faith, their prayers for the folks who were people of faith gathered at that potluck tonight.
Reverend Hudlow asking everyone to pray, but what you saw there was a powerful symbol of unity, a church community, not just at St. Stephen's, but all around, coming together saying that we're standing with you, we're praying for you, and that has to mean a lot for the folks there in that community.
Folks are gathering in the parking lot of the Publix in Cahaba Heights. They're also gathering online. The Episcopal Church of the Ascension tonight, as we speak, is holding a live online prayer vigil for St. Stephen's Church. The Episcopal Church of the Ascension is there on Canyon Road in Birmingham, so a fellow Episcopal church in the Alabama Diocese, and as we speak, holding an online prayer vigil tonight, underway right now for the victims of this shooting at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. And as you see, as we predicted, that circle of prayer in the Publix parking lot is growing by the minute as folks there are trying to send their love, their good thoughts, and their prayers, not only, as the Reverend mentioned, not just for the victims of this, but for the folks who are responding to this.
I just got a text from one of our viewers who just saying our world is broken in so many ways. and just talking about the situation. Like Reverend Hudlow said, you don't expect this to happen. They were there for a potluck dinner, and this kind of trauma has been unleashed on the folks at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. Your heart just goes out to the families there, your heart goes out to that community, and what you're seeing is this beautiful picture of unity coming together right now.
Yeah, what you are seeing is hope, folks. In a picture, it is a circle of hope. It is a circle of folks coming together and trying to make some good out of what has been a night of awful and bad, and that taking place very close to where this is taking place. So within half a mile or so, you have had tragedy unfold, and now you have at least some semblance of hope, or at least of healing, if that can happen, and community tonight as these folks are sitting there, standing there, praying for the folks who have been affected by this. And it is not just the folks, there's some hugs there. It's not just the folks who were inside the building at the time, Sarah. Certainly it is the folks who know people who were inside that building that are so affected by this as well. And tonight are desperately waiting for more information about their loved ones. And for some of them, sadly, at least of the one person we know has been killed, the information they're going to learn at some point will be tragic.
So authorities saying they will give us another update at the top of the hour. What we know, again, 2 people, as you said, have been wounded. 1 person is unfortunately deceased. Let's go to our Catherine Patterson, who is at the First Alert Desk.
Yeah, Sarah and Jonathan, as we've been hearing, St. Stephen's is built on love and grace. People of all different faiths are coming together to show their support and pray for the victims, the families of the victims, and this community right now. This is a live stream right now of a prayer, a silent prayer that's happening right now at the Episcopal Church of the Ascension. It's providing a place for silent prayers for the victims of the shooting this evening at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. They said that they will hold this prayer vigil beginning at 8:30, so it's been going on for about 6 minutes or so right now. This is live streaming on YouTube right now. It just shows the community coming together at such a tragic night for the members of their community, and everyone coming together to send their prayers and their love to these victims. As you said, Sarah and Jonathan, 2 shooting victims in the hospital right now, 1 unfortunately dying from this shooting at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church just around 6:15, 6:20 this evening at that potluck dinner. We heard they were having this event. Someone came in and started shooting. It's something that all of us cannot even begin to fathom happening. And as we've seen, many people in tears coming together, holding hands right outside the scene, just showing as much support as they can during this incredibly difficult time.
All right, Catherine, thanks. That's what we mentioned. There are churches that are responding by showing up physically. There are churches that are responding by showing up technologically, and they're able to do that. If you want to do that, that's happening online as we speak all around the country and around the world, folks who can gather up to that online service from the Church of the Ascension.
All right, let's go to our Jen Horton, who is at UAB, I believe. Jen, what can you tell us? Yes.
We just spoke with a public information officer here at UAB. They confirmed that they are treating those 2 gunshot victims here. They can't give an update on their condition. They couldn't give us any more information than that. They said everything else will have to come from the Vestavia Hills Police Department, but our suspicions were right. The Level 1 Trauma Center here offered their help to these people. They took them in. Again, it's difficult to gauge exactly what their conditions are, but hopefully we'll get that information in the next hour or so from Vestavia Hills Police. As you all mentioned, a lot of prayers going up for these people, the families involved. As we all know, gun violence has a ripple effect. Not only the people who are directly affected, but their families, their friends, and everyone from the folks even here who are treating these victims here tonight. So you can imagine this is causing a major ripple effect across the city, but it's an all-hands-on-deck situation here at UAB, a place that gets already so many trauma patients every day, throughout the day, all hours, victims of car wrecks, gun violence, so forth. So this is a situation they're ready and often, scheduled to deal with. So we'll stand by and hopefully we'll get some more information from you coming up very soon. Jonathan, Sarah?
Jen, thanks so much. Again, this is the value of having team coverage and having assets on the ground to be able to give that ground truth. As we suspected that those folks may have been taken to UAB, and now Jen able by being there to confirm that in fact they were. And again, really, you could argue no better place in the southern hemisphere to get, the northern hemisphere I should say, to get that kind of care than at UAB, folks who know exactly what they're doing in these situations.
You're getting a view of the scene outside there of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, still a very active scene, even though we are hours away from when that shooting happened. Authorities still doing their investigation, their due diligence, collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses and the like to make sure that they have all their ducks in order, as you might say or could say, to make sure that their investigation is on track.
And again, we have really two interesting scenes unfolding just a half a block or so apart from each other, Sarah. You have the law enforcement response here, which is significant, which we know includes federal resources from the FBI, the ATF, the U.S. Marshals Service. You have local fire departments, police departments who respond, and of course it will really be the police at this point to take over. The need for the fire department has passed, and their paramedic expertise. So they're all on the scene at that church, which, as you so eloquently put it, a church that's now a crime scene and will be until they finish processing all that evidence. And then, not too far away from there, is the Publix parking lot, where you have that circle of prayer of folks who gathered simply because they don't know what else to do. They want to do something to help, and they just have nothing else they can do other than to pray at this point, which is a great thing for them to do. And so they have gathered tonight to do that in the parking lot of Publix. And those two things are almost, you could, I'm sure, standing in that parking lot praying, you can see the flashing blue lights over your shoulder, where the police are dealing with a much more tragic set of circumstances.
You know, Reverend Kelly Hutlow, who just talked to us a few moments ago with the diocese there, talked about, she looked forward to the process of healing. And when Chastity asked her, what do you need? She says, we need everybody. We need all of you to pray for this community. She said, we are a people of prayer, and basically the first thing we do in trouble, the first thing you do in an emergency like this is that we pray, and asking all of you in the community to do the same for the community here at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church.
I want to pass along, we just got word from Governor Ivey. She is reacting to this tragedy tonight, and I'm going to read her quote in its entirety. She says, as we are learning about the shocking and tragic loss of a life at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia, we want to offer our prayers for the victim's family, the injured, and the entire church community. I am glad to hear the shooter is in custody. This should never happen in a church, in a store, in the city, or anywhere. We continue to closely monitor the situation, and there is the statement just into our newsroom from Governor Kay Ivey monitoring the situation tonight unfolding in Vestavia Hills.
It is a sad commentary on the times in which we live, that this is necessary, that churches and schools have to have security, but it is a reality right now. We have Chastity Maxey on the scene as well. Chastity, what can you tell us?
Well, Sarah, right now that prayer circle that you just saw moments ago is wrapping up. That group is now heading to just across the street from St. Stephen's Church right now. There's another church over there called St. John's Church, and that group is now going over there to gather and pray once again. And now there are several churches from the Episcopal family. I'm told that St. Luke's, St. Mary, Holy Apostles Hoover, St. Catherine's of Chelsea, and the Church of the Advent are just some of those churches that are out here tonight. All of these people just shocked, and of course their hearts are just really heavy right now, as some of their own are a part of that group that was involved in that shooting this evening. And of course everybody is still asking for the prayers of the community, and they're hoping that something like this will not happen ever again. Of course, we will keep you posted as to what is happening out here. Reporting live in Vestavia Hills, Chastity Maxey, WBRC Fox 6 News, on your side.
Chastity, thank you, and thanks for staying with us. Chastity doing some extra yeoman's duty tonight, staying well past her normal off time to give us this team coverage, which we appreciate. We've had a lot of folks coming into our newsroom to help us cover that. We want to thank them for providing that coverage for you as well, and providing that moment, which I'll be honest here, we sort of needed something, right? We needed a little uplift, and to see those different churches. And I was trying to start to write down. There's just too many to write down. We were trying to try to give everybody credit. I just can't write them all down fast enough. We know there's a lot of St. John's, St. Luke's, and some others that are gathered there tonight, and we smiled because of that ability to so rally up quickly and to be able to support them. So they prayed in the Publix parking lot. Now they're heading, I think she said, over to St. John's Church to pray in the parking lot there, because they're praying folks, and that's what they know how to do.
It kind of feels like the cavalry is coming, doesn't it? Coming to the rescue, because the healing process is going to probably be a long one for So many. Whether you are connected to the people who were inside the church, how traumatic that is. Reverend Kelly Hudlow saying they were in church at a church event. What we understand as that event was that potluck dinner, which was on their schedule. Somebody came in and just began shooting.
And that's really all we know about any potential motive or what unfolded there. Who is the person who tragically lost their life tonight inside that building, inside that gathering? Again, a question that we will probably not have an answer to until well into tomorrow is my guess, because there's a notification process. Obviously, you want that family to hear this first for themselves before the rest of us learn that that's only right and only respectful. But we will probably learn that sometime in the next 24 hours. And perhaps as well, the identity of those two victims who we now know, thanks to our Jen Horton, are being treated at UAB for the gunshots they sustained inside that church. And Sarah, obviously, if you're looking for silver linings, it is perhaps only this, and this is a sad silver lining, that there aren't more people who were shot, because you have to figure there was a lot of folks in a small area there and none of them expecting this to play out. So any loss of life is tragic, any wounding is tragic, and that's the end of that paragraph. But certainly when you hear active shooter inside a church, your mind can start to go wild with how bad this really could be.
All right, we're going to take you back to that news conference, that the briefing from Captain Shane Ware of the Vestavia Hills Police Department. Just in case you're just joining us, here's what he said.
3 people were shot during the incident inside of the church. 2 of them are currently being treated at a local hospital. And unfortunately, one of the persons that was shot is deceased.
No other information. We don't know the names of the victims. We don't know the name of the suspect. That person we do know is taken into custody. We don't believe that person was injured in any way. He did not give us that information, so we assume he was not injured. He or she was not injured. Just a lot of questions still to be answered.
Yeah, and we'll tell you, we've been reaching out trying to get in touch with the leadership of the city of Vestavia Hills. Of course, Mayor Ashley Curry, who is himself a retired FBI agent and is probably very familiar with responding to scenes like this, or at least knowing how that goes. So that expertise is certainly probably coming into play tonight, as well as some of their city council leadership. Obviously, you have councilors who represent the Cahaba Heights area, I'm sure, are there at the scene trying to tend to their folks, to their constituents. But we are efforting that response for you as well. We did just pass along the governor's statement. We'll bring that back for you in a second. Governor Ivey reacting tonight to this unfolding tragedy. For those of you who may just be joining us or who are tuning in from across the country on local news live on our great television network or around the world on our WBRC News app, give you some sense of where this unfolded tonight in Metro Birmingham. This is in Vestavia Hills, suburb just over the mountain, they say, from downtown Birmingham, in the Cahaba Heights section of Vestavia Hills, just northwest of 459, just northwest of the Liberty Park area, probably a mile as a crow flies from the Cahaba River. And right at the bottom of your screen there, where we say Overton Road, that little label is just in front of the Publix parking lot where that prayer circle was happening a moment ago. Next to that is the Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, where those media briefings have been taking place. And then right up the street is St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, where we know tonight 3 people were shot and sadly 1 has been killed inside a gathering at that church building. And Sarah, as you're mentioning, traffic is blocked off right there at the intersection of Overton and Crosshaven. Still is. So for folks who live in that area, there's a significant large neighborhood back there to the right, to the east of St. Stephen's, having to find an alternate route that doesn't involve getting around that intersection, which, by the way, most of the time is quite a busy one.
We talked to a number of people tonight, and they echoed the same thing. You never expect anything like this to happen in your community. That is something that we hear over and over again, and sadly, it has come to St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. Let's go now to Lauren Harkson, who is at the scene. Lauren, first of all, tell us where you are and what you're seeing. I know it's dark there, but give us an idea of what that perimeter looks like and if there's any activity coming in and out there.
Yeah, right now we're live right across the street from Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, which is just a few blocks away from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, where that active shooting happened just a few hours ago. So this whole street right here is actually blocked off. We are on Crosshaven Drive. Down the street that way, we've got police cars blocking off the road. Down the street this way, we have, as you can see, police cars blocking off the road. We've been here, of course, now for a few hours, and there was a lot of people from the public driving by, but now that is not possible since the road is blocked off. Of course, the latest information that we heard was within the last 30 minutes from Vestavia Hills Captain Shane Ware, and that's, of course, where he let us know that 3 people were shot at St. Stephen's. 2 of those are being treated at UAB, and 1 of those people, unfortunately, have passed. Now, they do have the suspect in custody. We have been urged and told that that suspect is taken into custody, and there is no threat in the Vestavia Hills area anymore at this time. But of course, the scene is still active. We're told the investigation, of course, is still ongoing. We've got police cars. We've got just plenty of people from Vestavia Hills Police. We've got Shelby County Sheriff's Office, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. We've got tons of units on the scene still, even here at night. And of course, we're supposed to actually hear an update in the next 10 minutes again from Vestavia Hills Police. They said every time they give us an update, they will give us new information. So we hope to have some new details in the next 10 minutes. But of course, that's what we have for now. And I'll send it back to the studio. Live in Cahaba Heights, Lauren Harkson, WBRC Fox 6 News, on your side.
All right, Lauren, thanks so much. We just got a statement from the First United Methodist Church of Birmingham, that says we are praying for our siblings at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church after tonight's shooting. Lord, in your mercy, help our nation heal the harm we cause and lay down our love. That is Pastor Stephanie from First United Methodist Church there in Birmingham saying they are praying for the folks at St. Stephen's tonight. Again, other communities of faith beginning to rally to the side of these victims and this church. And as we said, Sarah, this is a church that's going to need a lot of help. There's going to be a lot of emotional needs to meet. Everybody who is inside that building tonight is going to obviously have a lot to unpack and to process. And everybody who attends there and knows folks there has a lot to unpack.
And then we saw other churches, members of other churches gathering in a parking lot praying and letting those folks know we are here for you, we've got you covered in prayer and anything else that you will need as the days go on in the healing process. Reverend Kelly Hudlow saying that they are going to need everything.
Seen some, and as know we both, Sarah, are immediately, when this church came to mind, I thought, do I know anybody who attends there? And my first thought was, I don't think so. But we both know folks who have or had used to attend there. We just, Lauren Harkson ran into someone who attended church there with his parents, right, and talked to us about that experience. I'm seeing folks now on social media who I'm familiar with who said, yes, we used to go there. We baptized our kids there. So everybody sort of, Birmingham's a big city and a small community, right, all at the same time. And so that is playing out tonight as folks begin to send their love and prayers to St. Stephen's. And I believe we have one of those folks from earlier. Is that what Brian was telling us?
Brian, repeat that again. Okay, let's go to Reverend Kelly Hudlow. We talked to her a little bit earlier. Let's listen in.
Part of being the Episcopal Church is St. Stephen's isn't alone. It's connected to 80-something other churches here in Alabama, and then we're connected to a network of churches across the world. And so we're getting messages from people from all over the United States and around the world praying for this community tonight. And we'll continue to pray for those that have been hurt, that they have healing, for the doctors and nurses that are tending to them, but also praying for this community that is going to be very shocked and hurt as we learn more information about what happened tonight.
Kelly Hudlow, as you said, that was even before we saw the prayer circle form up.
Yes.
We see you saying we're covering this in prayer, and she may have just been doing it, her and a couple of folks in that parking lot there. That obviously effort has expanded. As we said, it's going on as we speak online. It's going on there in person. We know that the prayer circle that started at Publix is moving to St. John's, and I think our Chastity Maxey is moving with us. We also want to let you know we have heard from the mayor's office in Vestavia Hills, Mayor Curry. We expect to get a statement from him, a written statement here in the next few minutes. Through them. We'll not be making any verbal comment, but the mayor expected to give us a statement. We'll pass that along as soon as we get it. And lo and behold, Farrah, these stories begin to play out and time just rushes by. And here we are almost back to the top of the hour where we're expecting another update from Captain Shane Ware with hopefully some more information about what took place tonight and how those two victims who we know are at UAB are doing.
He didn't give very many details, but we did learn from Reverend Kelly Hudlow. What she said was that they were in the church at a church event, and we know that the only thing that was on the schedule was a potluck dinner tonight that was supposed to last from 5 until 7. And she said they were in the event, and then someone just came in and started shooting.
And we talked about the impact this is having on the community. We, very early on tonight, even while the sun was still up, we talked to a couple of folks who heard about this, heard the sirens, came out to see what was going on, and had a connection, as it turned out, to St. Stephen's.
And we heard multiple sirens going in spurts of 3, 4, 5, and then the silence, and then 3, 4, 5. And he picked me up at work to go swimming, and we got behind the first ambulance that was heading towards Grandview. Correct. I attended Sunday evening services with my mother and stepfather several times, and it's a great church, great people, and it just breaks my heart that something like this would happen so close to home.
Also hearing just now from Chief Bill Partridge of the Oxford Police Department, I believe former or maybe still current head of the Police Chiefs Association of Alabama, saying that they are sending their prayers to Vestavia Hills, the city, and to the police department. Again, that's what you have to think about, is some of our men and women who were responding to the scene tonight, who are still inside that parish hall, processing whatever happened and looking at evidence, whether it's ammunition, whether it is any kind of other evidence, physical evidence. They're trying to gather and process the scene and doing a professional job of it, because obviously now we know, sadly, there's been a loss of life and other people hurt and a suspect in custody. So there is a investigation, there's a court case to play out, and this is all part of that. These first few minutes can be so important in laying down and figuring out what happened.
Exactly, and that gentleman we were just listening to who talked about having that connection, having been to that church, attending services, at the end of his interview, he said, "I wish I had a solution." As we look at these kinds of situations playing out, shootings, mass shootings, over and over and over again, I think we all say, we wish we had a solution.
There has to be a better way, is the only thing that everybody sort of agrees on. How we get there is something perhaps there's not universal agreement on yet. Jen Horton is live for us at UAB tonight, where those 2 victims who were shot are being treated. Jen, you've rushed around for us from Grandview to UAB, and we appreciate that work. This is an area, by the way, of town that you're pretty familiar with as well. I just wonder first your thoughts about what has unfolded at St. Stephen's tonight.
You know, it's been a really difficult night, I think, for all of us. You don't have to go there. You don't have to know the parishioners there. For your heart to just go out to them, because this, as you mentioned earlier, has become such an unfortunate common theme that we're seeing play out across the country. It's something that's gaining national and international attention. I just had a quick FaceTime with a news station in Toronto. One of our former employees, Bakari Savage, works there now, and they wanted to hear from us exactly what was going on here in the backdrop of that major gun debate that they're having in DC right now. So it's something that everyone has their eyes and ears very close to right now. It's a situation that's affecting us here at home. You know, folks are kind of slowing down by the ER when they see us. Of course, UAB is not willing or able to give us any more information about those victims tonight, but we know this is a level 1 trauma center, a place where they can treat the worst of the worst, and typically that's exactly who they send to this hospital. It's difficult not to know exactly the conditions tonight, the ages. We just know so little, leaving so much to our imagination. But, you know, as we talked earlier, it's just the ripple effect that affects all of us, from the church all the way here to downtown. The folks who are treating these patients now, attempting to get them better and well, to get on the other side of their recovery. An interesting point, I mentioned earlier that UAB's had to bolster its trauma team because of the number of gun victims that we've continued to have here in Birmingham and in the surrounding areas. And it's a situation where they're prepared for this around the clock. They plan for this around the clock. And so we're just very curious to see the extent of those injuries. UAB mentioned that they have all hands on deck, so it's not a wide number of victims, but again, the level of those injuries is something that we're really wanting to know more about. Jonathan, Sarah?
Jen, thanks so much. We also know, as we were talking to you, Jen, that Gary Palmer, the congressman who represents this area, Vestavia Hills is in his district, says, my staff and I are closely monitoring the situation in Vestavia Hills. Please be in prayer for those being treated in the hospital and for our community as well. So Congressman Palmer, again, perhaps from Washington tonight, weighing in on what's happening here at home and saying he is in contact monitoring what's taking place in Vestavia Hills. We are about to reach the top of the hour, so we'll want to reset for you just a moment what we know. But if Jen's still with us, is Jen still with us, guys? Okay, we'll get back to Jen in a second, that's fine. But she was just talking about the sad reality, Sarah, that UAB has had to increase their staffing to deal with traumatic gun injuries because of what has unfolded, sadly, in our neck of the woods. And Jen, I wonder if you could just speak to that for a second. That is expertise that we wish we didn't have to have, but in situations like this, it seems like every time we have an incident that involves gunfire and something significant, we have a crew down there where you are because those are the folks who know best how to help.
That's exactly right. They know exactly where we're going to be. They came right out to us tonight and told us exactly what we needed to know. They said, you know where you need to be. And that's just a really unfortunate reality when we all kind of click into gear, because this is something that's become so unfortunately familiar to all of us. And, you know, it's a situation where the doctors and nurses, I spoke to them a couple of weeks ago, and I said, how do you handle this? How do you kind of power through this? And they said, we lean on each other a lot. And the interesting thing that I found out is a number of their trauma surgeons here are retired war veterans, war surgeons that, were deployed during 9/11, some of our worst war arenas in our history, at least. And they've seen it all. And the surgeon I spoke to a couple of weeks ago said, it's very much like wartime. It comes in spurts. You have highs and you have lows, and the numbers kind of go back and forth. And when I spoke to them, the thing that was really on their radar was bolstering their staff for the World Games. And so when you think about the major events that are on the calendar, and then you pivot toward something like this that's never on the calendar, it just kind of goes to show you that their lives never stop here. Being a level 1 trauma center, they see a little bit of everything. So we know that at the very least, knowing that the patients are here gives them a great level of comfort, because they're in good hands, especially when they hear news like this. They really do pull all hands on deck. Jonathan, Sarah.
All right, Jen, thanks so much. And again, our team coverage continues now at the top of the hour. Jonathan Hardison, along with Sarah Verser and our WBRC Fox 6 News team, spread out around the area tonight, covering an unfolding tragedy, a shooting and killing of one person inside St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Cahaba Heights. 2 other people hit and recovering, hopefully, at UAB tonight.
Yeah, this is on Crosshaven Drive. That area is blocked off right now. Let's go now to our Lauren Harkson, who is on the scene there, not far from that church.
Yeah, actually, I'm live in the parking lot of Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, which is just a little bit down the ways from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, and that's where that shooting happened. We just received new information within the last hour from Vestavia Hills, and they told us that 3 people were shot there at the church. Around 6:22 is when they got the active shooting call, and of course, different agencies from all over the city of Birmingham rushed to go ahead and figure out what was going on. Of course, now we know 3 people were shot. 2 of those are being treated at UAB Hospital, and unfortunately, one of those people have since passed. Now, the suspect, though, has been taken into custody. We're told there is no threat at this time for the Vestavia Hills area. And of course, we are actually supposed to get another update in just a few minutes. We're here a couple feet away from where we're going to have the PIO set up. So just stay tuned on air and online for the latest information, and we'll bring it to you as soon as we know it. Live in Cahaba Heights, Lauren Harkson, WBRC Fox 6 News, on your side.
Lauren, thanks so much. We're going to get to Catherine Patterson at the First Alert Desk in a moment. I believe she's gotten the first statement from Ashley Curry, who is the mayor of Vestavia Hills, and his city, of course, hurting and grieving tonight.
For those of you just tuning in to our coverage now, this all started around 6:20, 6:22, right after when we were getting off from the 6 o'clock news.
Right.
We got word about this active shooter situation happening at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. 3 people were shot. We learned that, and we also have information from the PIO on that.
And you were the first to discover, Sarah, that this was a potluck unfolding inside the parish hall where we believe this all took place. It was on the schedule tonight, and that is where the diocese says somebody walked in and began shooting. Catherine Patterson at the First Alert Desk. New reaction from Ashley Curry, an FBI agent retired and the mayor of Vestavia Hills.
Yeah, that's right, Jonathan. We've been waiting to hear from him just to get some reaction about this heartbreaking night in his city in Vestavia Hills. He was posting on the City of Vestavia Hills Facebook page. This is from Mayor Ashley Curry. Quote, "With the tragic news that has broken this evening, I offer my heartfelt condolences to the victims of this evening's shootings at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. I would also like to offer thanks on behalf of myself and our Vestavia Hills residents to the first responders from all agencies who have worked tirelessly since this incident began." And he goes on to update his community members just about the situation that is going on at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. Again, we know that 3 people were shot, 2 people being treated for injuries, and 1 person has devastatingly passed away from this shooting. I did also speak with George Pierce. He is a Vestavia Hills city councilor. He's actually out of town on business tonight, but he said he is watching all of our coverage of this shooting right now in shock, he says, and he is just hearing about what's going on as he's trying to piece together all of the information as it comes in. He says he is praying for the victims. He is praying for this community. That's what he says Vestavia Hills needs tonight, and for many days to come is prayer. So we'll continue to keep you updated as we hear from more local officials on this tragic night in Vestavia Hills.
All right, Catherine, thanks. Let's walk you through, as Sarah was talking about, sort of how we began to cover this story, and beginning with what we saw when our cameras and crews first arrived there just about 6:40 tonight. Not long after that call went on, you saw this massive police and first responder presence. We know that Hoover Police, Mountain Brook Police, Vestavia Hills Police, of course, this is their jurisdiction, and others responded as well to try and rally up and go neutralize the threat, which they successfully did at some point. That suspect is in custody. And then you had the first responders and firefighters and paramedics coming there rushing to help those victims. We now know there were 3. 2 of them taken to UAB Hospital. And then as the night wore on, they began to push us a little bit farther back and would not give us very much information at first, understandably, as they tried to process the scene. And then as this news began to leak out, the community began to respond. And we saw those prayer circles forming in the parking lot of Publix, which is continuing. And we've seen several online services going on even as we speak, Sarah, around the city, and folks from all around the country. As Catherine was just saying, one of the city councilors is out of town watching us online tonight and watching our coverage as this thing unfolds in his city. And we know there's so many folks with ties to Birmingham, ties to this church in Vestavia, watching this with interest tonight.
And we also talked to Reverend Kelly Hudlow, who really put out that call for prayer, saying we need everybody, no matter your faith, to pray for this community, looking forward to the healing process that this community will have to go through, with 1 person dead, 2 people injured, and then you have the folks who were inside who experienced the trauma of what went on today. She says, we are a people of prayer, and basically the first thing we know to do is pray. And then we saw that beautiful scene in the parking lot of people from other churches who just felt they needed to come down to the parking lot there at the Publix, and they all held hands and they began to pray.
And this comes after we spoke to the Reverend Kelly Hudlow, who was with the diocese, the Episcopal Diocese of Alabama tonight, who said even before that had happened, she said, we are going to respond to this with prayer. We're going to cover this in prayer. We need everybody out there, whatever your belief system, to send love and pray for this community, because they're going to need it. This is something you never expect to happen in your community, she said. This happens in other places. You don't expect it to happen in the Birmingham community. And she referenced this community of 80 Episcopal churches in the Diocese of Alabama. And we know that the head of the diocese, the Right Reverend Glenda Curry, is here in this area tonight, dealing with and responding to the needs of the parish here, of the parishioners, of the staff who are obviously affected by this. And one of the folks who was watching this prayers unfold was our Chastity Maxey.
That's right. Let's go to her right now. Chastity.
Well, Sarah and Jonathan, we're still in the parking lot here at Publix right now. We were here a little while ago, about 30 minutes ago, where there was a prayer circle here, and that group actually went to another church that's right across the street from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, where that shooting happened earlier today. Now, we do see that there are parishioners leaving that area now, so we believe that that prayer vigil over there just wrapped up. And of course, people are still shaken by this. Just spoke to a young lady a few minutes ago who said that they had tokens of where they had their that were blessed at the church, and it's just been a very hard night for them, of course, and everybody is still reeling from what happened. And of course, everybody coming together. If there is a silver lining to all of this, it's when tragedy strikes that people do come together and they find the love to share between each other. We saw people holding hands and hugging perfect strangers tonight, and of course, that's probably going to be the sentiment in this area for a long time. I spoke with another couple who had been living here for over a decade, and they said that nothing like this has ever happened in this community. They were saying that just the other day there was a car accident in a parking lot, and that was the most action this area has seen in the tonight was something that they just could not believe. And so we did talk earlier to Kelly Hudlow, and she had this to say.
Something that you never expect to happen in your community. You know, this happens in other places, and you just don't think it's going to happen here in the Birmingham area, and so it is shocking. But the one thing that we know is that St. Stephen's as a church is a community that's built on love and prayers and grace, and they're going to come together. But we also know that this community of Vestavia, people of all different faiths, are coming together right now to pray, to send thoughts, to hope for healing for the people that are at the hospital, praying for the law enforcement officers that are here.
Now, Kelly Hudlow putting out that call for everyone who is able to pray tonight to whatever God you believe in. They are asking for prayers for this community and this church right now. And I'll send it back to you guys live in Vestavia Hills. Chastity Maxey, WBRC Fox 6 News on your side.
Chastity, thanks. And we see even behind her folks continuing to walk up, sort of joining this effort. This is something that is evolving over time, and obviously folks are responding on social media as well. We just saw a Facebook post from someone who says they attend St. Stephen's and says, just pray for my church. This is literally too close to home, less than half a mile. Pray for healing and safety. A fellowship dinner for baby boomers was on the calendar tonight. These are good people, and I'm in disbelief, and I think that probably speaks for all of us.
Reverend Hudlow saying that they were in this event, this dinner event. Someone just came in and started shooting. How awful. And we're hearing from people who are saying they're in shock, disbelief, sadness, just a gamut of emotions as we deal with this situation tonight.
And obviously the city of Vestavia Hills is the lead agency on this, so there's a law enforcement side to this. And we should mention again, we're expecting to hear from Captain Shane Ware with the Vestavia Hills Police Department. He has been the only source of that information tonight, the official information, and we expect again to hear from him any moment now. That was going to happen around the top of the hour. These things are always fluid in these situations, usually a little bit late, and that's understandable. And that's where we are right now, is waiting for that next bit of information. Could be the last time we hear from them tonight, just depending on how this investigation unfolds. And we should go ahead and tell you, our team coverage of this will not end whenever we leave the air tonight. It will continue overnight. Anything we get, we will of course have 24/7 coverage on. Good Day Alabama will pick up the baton tomorrow at 4 a.m. on TV. But in between now and then, if you want to share this news with the folks that you care about, the latest that we have, it'll always be on our WBRC News app.
Well, think of all the things that the police have to do. They have the investigation, but they also have to notify loved ones of what has happened. That takes time. Maybe they can't reach somebody, so they can't come before the media and tell us more information. They can't give us identities until they have notified the next of kin.
That's right, and obviously they know who this suspect is, so that part of the investigation has already begun, and we talked about all the resources that, and by the way, this is a live picture of where we expect to hear from Captain Ware any moment now. That's where we'll take you as we wait for that to continue. But there's so many resources being poured into this. There's federal resources. It's the FBI, the ATF, if they needed to trace the weapon. ATF is certainly capable of doing that. They've got a database that can help them do that. Where did it come from? Who does it belong to? Was it the suspect? Was it somebody else? That can be part of it. How did the suspect end up inside that parish hall tonight? Of course, the number one question, and perhaps one that only that person can answer. And I'm sure that process of trying to to get to the bottom of that is underway as we speak.
And at some point, they're going to be talking about safety protocols, and a number of churches who are watching this, or ministers watching this, are also thinking, what can we do at our church? How do we keep this from happening? And it's just sad commentary that we even have to have these kinds of conversation. Shock, disbelief, sadness, and this is where we are.
And you know what is also just troubling as you sort of filter through some of the folks who are reacting to our coverage tonight is some folks saying, are we that surprised though? Should we be shocked? Because this is something that unfortunately has become too much of a part of American life, especially of late. It feels like in the last few weeks these things sort of come in spurts, and we've had the Uvalde, Texas shooting, you had the Buffalo shooting just a few days before that, and now you have this, which is affecting certainly our community tonight especially, and how awful it is to consider a church a soft target, right? Or how do you secure a building like that? But you know, when you're trying to show up for a potluck on a Thursday night in the parish hall, and you're bringing your covered dish, or you're bringing your you're bringing your 2 liter of Diet Coke, or whatever it is you're bringing to the potluck tonight, you're not trying to think about when you walk in, how do I get out of here if somebody comes in and starts shooting? What's the closest exit point? But you know, and Sarah, when we went to movies after the shooting in Colorado at the Batman movie, remember that awful thing unfolded?
Aurora.
Yeah, Aurora. The next couple of times that you would go into a movie theater, you'd start to look around and go, okay, if I had to get out of here, right? It's instinctual in some ways that it goes through your mind. And so now, sadly, the folks who are at this church tonight, the next time they walk into a room with folks, are going to be thinking about their exit points. And maybe there's some good in that to be able to protect yourself the best you can. But should you have to show up to a potluck on a Thursday night worried about your safety?
I refuse to believe that we have to get used to this as something as normal. We have got to come together and find a solution. We can do it. We can definitely do that.
The urge to unite is certainly there in this community, and you've seen that tonight as this whole thing has begun to play out, and we've seen folks gather. I'm just looking at more folks walking through our pictures here, even as this night wears on now into the 9:15 time frame tonight. These folks are gathering, and I think what will be equally as uplifting, Sarah, is I can already tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not a crystal ball person, but I can tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. You're going to have more help and more covered dishes.
Definitely.
You think there's a lot of covered dishes at the potluck tonight?
Definitely.
You just wait for the food that's going to come in tomorrow. The folks are going to come in and respond and say, show up to this church once they're allowed back in, once they're allowed to reclaim, take back their building as not a crime scene, but a place of worship. These folks are going to gather like they did tonight in a prayer circle, but there's going to be multitudes more than this that will show up to that building to say, what can I do? How can I help? What aid, what comfort can I provide? What resources can I provide? And that is going to be something I can go ahead and tell you what we will see play out tomorrow in our coverage is folks who don't know anybody connected to this church tonight, but just simply say, I got to help, and they're going to show up and do that.
So, like I said, the Calvary is going to arrive because these people want to prove that love will always outlast and conquer evil. What happened here was evil, and lives have been shattered as a result. And this is where the love circle is, right here. They're going to make sure of it and cover these folks with prayer, as Reverend Hudlow has put out that call for everyone to pray for this community.
So again, we are waiting. Okay, looks like Captain Ware is on his way to the podium and the microphones, and we expect to hear from him in just a moment. Our Lauren Harkson on the scene says we should see him approaching that media staging area in just a moment, and so we expect to see him shortly to give us an update on what this investigation has uncovered to this point. Again, one of the first questions on all of our minds we hope to have answered soon is how those 2 victims who are being treated, we now know at UAB, are doing. Obviously, if they can give us the identity of the suspect or of tragically the victim who we know have lost their life inside St. Stephen's tonight, another key question. And again, our crew on the scene tells us that they should be on their way to this platform very shortly. And once we see Captain Ware step up for we expect to be another very short briefing, short press conference, we'll take that live for you there. But again, waiting to hear from him as to what they can tell us tonight about the investigation, and this may or may not be the last time we hear from them until the morning.
And our Lauren Harkson also was at this close to the church, not directly at the church,
Right.
because it is it's blocked off, folks, and it's still a very active scene there as authorities process any evidence that still remains in that church. So if you're thinking about going in that area, don't, because they have it blocked off and they don't want you to come in and kind of hamper what they're doing right there.
And again, that's a very busy intersection any time of the day or night. Crosshaven and Overton Road, lots of traffic converges there. It's a very busy spot, and again, it's completely shut down and maybe for the rest of the night. Couldn't speculate about the morning perhaps, but obviously this is an investigation that they want to get right. They want to make sure every I is dotted, T is crossed when it comes to processing the scene, gathering evidence, building a case. As wild as that may seem, given the fact that you have multiple witnesses, they are going to have to make a case here, potentially in court. And so you don't want all that evidence to be uncorrupted. You want everything to be as it should be. And so that's what they're doing right now, is gathering that evidence. And we expect to hear from Captain Weir just momentarily. I'm told he's at the site and should be in front of those cameras momentarily. But again, there's a whole section of this, an investigation that's unfolding inside St. Stephen's Church, which, as you said, Sarah, is going to be a crime scene for at least the next few hours, and will be, as you start to think about down the road, what happens the first time that church is ready to gather, say Sunday, for services at that building, and what choice do they make then? Do they gather there? Do they gather somewhere else? Do they gather outside? All questions that the diocese is probably trying to grapple with even tonight.
And we don't know when the police department is going to release it as a crime scene, when they're going to release it to the church. So yeah, a lot of questions still remain. And yeah, you think about the next time anybody who was in that room at the time has to go back into the building, it's going to bring up those memories once again. So that healing process is going to be really key.
Yeah.
That's why members of the diocese said they rushed people there, the staff there, to see how they're doing, help them through this very traumatic situation.
We just got the 2-minute warning from our crew on the scene there that we believe Captain Weir is approaching the camera position, or should be in the next minute or so. So we are close to getting that update. You talked about, Sarah, the building and the memories that brings back. You know, we've heard that students, when they come back in the fall to Robb Elementary in Uvalde, won't be going to that same building. It's going to be something different. We saw that same thing happen tragically in Sandy Hook, where that building was never used in the same way. I think they knocked it down and built something else, if I recall, because there's just too much attached to it. That may not be a practical option in this case for St. Stephen's. Now, it's a relatively new building, I think, as well, but it is something that this church is going to have to grapple with. How do you turn this back into a place that you look forward to going to, a place where you see your friends and your extended church family, where you worship, where you gather, a place of community that was turned into a crime scene tonight, and how do you reclaim that?
Exactly.
And that's going to be a difficult message to reclaim.
You're getting a look at the scene there. That's what after nightfall, and this happened at 6:22 in the evening. That's when we first got the calls about the active shooter situation at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. But you can see it's still a very active scene there, and I think.
Here we go.
Are y'all ready? Again, my name is Captain Shane Ware with the Vestavia Hills Police Department. With me is Lieutenant Mike Keller and Officer George French from the Mountain Brook Police Department. At 6:22 on June 16th, the Vestavia Hills Police Department and the Vestavia Hills Fire Department were dispatched to a call of an active shooter at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church located at 3775 Crosshaven Drive. From what we've gathered from the circumstances of this evening, a lone suspect entered a small group church meeting and began shooting. 3 people were shot. 2 people are deceased. 1 person is being treated for an unknown injury at a local hospital. I would like to reiterate that the suspect is in custody. I would like to reiterate that there is no threat to the community at this time. My next briefing will be at 9:30 in the morning at the Vestavia Hills Police Department, located at 1032 Montgomery Highway, Vestavia Hills. If anybody needs to pass along any information concerning this investigation to the Vestavia Hills Police Department and our detectives, I need them to call area code 205-978-0140. The Vestavia Hills Police Department would like to express our prayers for the families of the victims of this tragic event and for everyone in our community and greater community that is affected by this tragedy. Again, I'd like to thank the everyone that has provided assistance to us, both federal and local, fire and police departments, including the Mountain Brook Police Department, Shelby County Sheriff's Office, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, the Hoover Police Department, the FBI, the ATF, the United States Marshal Service, the Pelham Police Department, Rocky Ridge Fire Department, the Mountain Brook Fire Department, and the Hoover Fire Department. I will not be taking any additional questions at this time. This will be our last press briefing of the evening. Thank you.
And so with that, Captain Shane Weir makes this night even more sad and even more tragic. And the news now that 2 people have been killed by a shooter, a lone shooter, he said tonight, who walked into St. Stephen's Church in a small gathering and opened fire.
This all unfolded at 6:22 this evening. It's just very sad that another family is getting that very awful news right now at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. The situation there, he's not giving out identities, and so we assume that he has called people who are closely related to these folks.
Right, and this is the last time he says we're going to hear from police tonight, so 9:30 in the morning, now some 12 hours away. The next time we will hear from law enforcement who are handling this investigation, but obviously the hope was that obviously that no one would have lost their life. That was our hope when we came on the air with our team coverage now some almost 3 hours ago. And then sadly we learned at one point about 8 o'clock that 1 person had been killed, 2 people were shot and being treated at UAB. We now know one of those victims taken to UAB has died. And so now 2 people have been shot and killed inside St. Stephen's Church. 1 person still being treated at UAB for their injuries, and obviously our prayers certainly with them and the hope that they are able to survive their injuries. And you begin again, Sarah, just to think about showing up for, he said a small church gathering tonight, which would fit with this picture we have of a potluck going on in the parish hall, which is what was on the church schedule tonight, and which is what the diocese sort of referred to as well. Gathered for this potluck, and a lone shooter walks in and begins opening fire in the middle of the small gathering. And I don't know about you, but the picture I have as well, I think back to a similar incident like this, although with a much different connotation. That was Charleston. It was a small group Bible study gathered at that church when a shooter walked in. Was obviously much different motives, we think. We don't know the motive behind the shooter tonight, but just a small church gathering and somebody walks in and starts firing.
Very, very sad situation. Captain Weir also giving out a phone number for people who needed to get information from them. It was 205-978-0140, presumably anyone who might be related to some of the folks who were impacted by this awful active shooter situation at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church.
So what took place tonight? Why would somebody walk in and do this? There's probably, whatever the answer to that is eventually, and whenever we learn that, it's not going to be satisfying, and we can go ahead and tell you that. That's one thing we know. There is no reason that anybody could possibly assign to do something like this that would make any sense to anyone. But it is a question that always deserves an effort to answer, and that's what law enforcement is going to begin to do tonight as they try and unpack what led this person, as the captain just described, a lone shooter, into this gathering. What brought them there? Why there? Why would they show up at this gathering at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church tonight? Don't know, but that's what we're hoping to find out.
Well, let's go to our Jennifer Horton, who is at UAB. Jennifer, we just got the sad news that, yes, another person has died.
Not the news we wanted to hear. We understand both of those victims were transported here to UAB. One of those victims that were being treated here just did not make it. The other still receiving care. So much we still don't know. Just listening to that press briefing with Vestavia Hills, my mind immediately begins to wonder again, how old are these victims? How old was the gunman, the lone gunman that they mentioned? What kind of weapon did they have? What motive? How did we get here? And I know that's the key thing authorities are doing tonight, attempting to reconstruct exactly how we got here at 6:22 when this all unfolded. I know that it's something that they're working closely with UAB. UAB's told us outright, we will not give out any more information. Everything else has to go through Vestavia Hills Police Department. You mentioned getting those next of kin notifications. It's something that we hear about every day when we cover shootings. It's something that we think about. These folks whose friends and family just went to a little fellowship dinner that they have monthly, and this was the absolute outcome. It's unthinkable for all of us, but again, we're also curious to hear exactly what authorities come up with and what we may learn tomorrow. But again, my mind as a former crime reporter starts to wonder about the charges with the federal government being involved, with tracing a weapon, potentially all these systems that they have at their disposal. Will this end up being a hate crime? So much of what we've heard about in other shootings across the country. So here at UAB, a really difficult scene tonight, knowing that one of those victims' injuries just was too difficult to help them kind of turn the corner here. The other still alive and receiving care at UAB, one of the best places in the state to get care in a difficult situation like this. We're still monitoring these updates, and if we hear anything from here in downtown Birmingham, Jonathan and Sarah, we will be the first to let you know.
And Jen, you were talking earlier about your special report, which was extremely good. I advise people to go on our website and our news app to watch your story on how UAB is expanding their staff to make room for so many emergencies like this, so many shootings.
That's right. It's something they plan for all the time. It's something that they have at least 2 trauma certified surgeons here on staff ready for 24/7. As I mentioned earlier, they've been planning, looking at the calendar, getting ready for the World Games. They plan around major events. Never, I suspect, do they plan around a fellowship dinner at an Episcopal church on a random Thursday night, in the middle of the summer. But it's something that they're ready for. They stand ready. These are not only certified trauma surgeons, but they're also, many of them, war veterans. And unfortunately, much of the violence that they've been seeing and treating here in Birmingham, central Alabama, has been comparative to their experiences in war arenas, going all the way back to 9/11. And it's really sad, the state that we're in, but it's forcing hospitals like UAB to bring more residents on board, to bring more physicians assistants, all the things that they need to do the job. And even then, sometimes it's not enough. They even mentioned the subspecialties that are involved in so many of these cases. When they arrive, so often they have to go straight into the OR. They take up so many of the ORs, sometimes it kind of, pushes back some of the surgery side of the equation, depending on if it's a major car wreck, a mass shooting, etc. So, it's something that they plan for, but they have subspecialties. They have facial surgeons, they have orthopedic reconstructionists, people that are in bad car wrecks or shootings. They have to have their body sort of pieced back together. And we think, breath of relief that someone survived a shooting, but they talked a lot about the fact that it's not just, you survived, we've sewn you back up and send you home. These people live with injuries for the remainder of their lives. You think about just the emotional trauma that many of these survivors will have for the rest of their lives. The same will go here for this, lone survivor of this shooting and the road to recovery that they still have ahead. Jonathan, Sarah.
Jen, thanks so much. And again, we're so glad to have you and your expertise there at this particular scene. Reporter and subject matter, never perhaps more properly married than this at this point for this tragedy unfolding. And I just wondered, Jen, my thoughts go to the families who were rushing to UAB tonight when they were notified that it was their loved one who had been shot and was taken there. And so those two families gathering for the same reason, and then their paths diverge. And one family probably inside that hospital learned that their loved one did not make it, and the other one is in there tonight praying that they will.
That's right. We're just across the street from the ER. You can see into the main waiting room just off this downtown street. And that's where so many of us who have had loved ones that have surgery or have been rushed to the hospital, we sit and we wait for the news. And everyone can identify with that feeling. It's unsettling. It's almost an outer body experience. And I looked up into that waiting room tonight, and your heart just breaks for these people. The phone call that they never want to hear, the drive that they never want to make. And you know, we're journalists, they're officers, but at the foremost point, we're still people. And you can't help but just hurt, you know, at the end of the day, for people who are going through this, because it's something that we can all at some level identify with, sitting in a hospital, hoping for the best in a really difficult, unsettled situation. And it's terribly unsettling tonight.
Terribly unsettling is so true, Jen, not just for the folks who are inside that waiting room, but for all of us who are sort of experiencing this together and experiencing that bubble of safety that you feel. I mean, listen, we're in the buckle of the Bible Belt, right? There are folks all across our viewing area who attend a church of some kind or another, of many different denominations and descriptions. And when they go in there, they don't expect to have to be worried about their safety.
Yeah, it's a certain amount of innocence. St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, and over again, Jen, we heard people saying, we never expect this to happen in our community. And when we say our, they were talking about the greater Birmingham metro community, because when it comes down to it, we all are together and we love each other in our community, and this is awful. And
this is why, again, you have seen, we are, as Jen said, we're journalists, we're also humans. So the human part of me wants to find something positive to latch onto tonight, right? You've got to have something to end this night with at some point, with some hope. And if there is that, it has been the response we've already seen from folks who are coming together and supporting each other, other churches. I know we're going to speak to a pastor, I think, in a second, who's part of that effort, but folks who are just gathering to pray in that parking lot, just physically getting close to where this happened, to pray for those folks who are hurt and for those folks who are hurt emotionally. And we're inside that room. Again, if you can just imagine, Sarah, if you're one of the survivors who was not hit, but you were sitting in that small gathering when this all unfolded, just imagine trying to get to sleep at some point. Wow. I mean, imagine trying to just close your eyes and put that out of your mind for a second, let your mind rest. So there's a lot of resources being poured into supporting these folks who so desperately need it tonight. And we know that'll continue in the days ahead. And if we can see that beautiful prayer circle again, because that's the call that went out from the Reverend Kelly Hudlow to tell everybody to pray, saying that she was getting reaction from all over the world, over their network of not just churches, but other communities also calling in and praying for this community. And if you're not a person of faith, this was a time at least to just sort of show up and physically say, hey, I'm here. I'm sending my love, sending my thoughts and prayers for them. Part of the folks who are doing that is the Reverend Stephanie Arnold from First United Methodist Church in Birmingham. Reverend Arnold, can you hear us?
I sure can. We
saw the post you already put up tonight saying that you were offering your prayers for this church. I guess we have so many questions, and I just want to start with your thoughts as somebody who leads a church as your profession and as your calling to what's unfolding tonight in Vestavia Hills.
Yeah, I'm actually a resident of Vestavia Hills, and prior to serving the church that I currently serve, I worked for 7 years at a congregation in Vestavia. So, I mean, I think like y'all have already said, it's just so utterly devastating, and we've watched this play out all across our nation, and we've listened to siblings in other parts of our country, lament and just desperately cry out when it happens in their community. Even though we are all cognizant of the fact that I guess in our world that can and it does, it feels so different when it happens in your hometown. And I think that's what we're feeling tonight.
I wonder, Reverend Arnold, if you could speak to some of the logistics that you as a church leader have to go through and think about now. We talked about the congregations where Sarah and I both attend have officers, off-duty officers, but are in uniform, who are armed at church gatherings as a normal part of the setup. What kind of security do you provide at your church? How will this make you re-examine security for this? Was not a church, this was a small gathering. This wasn't a service, it was a potluck.
It was a potluck. You're asking a really poignant question, and one that, I'm sure most pastors have already been on the phone like I have tonight with their chair of trustees or, their leadership council, because you're right. We a couple of years ago moved from one uniformed police officer to two on Sunday mornings, and we limited our entry points. Like, we know you can get out from any access inside the building, but you can only come in from certain points so that we can have eyes on those points of entry, much like our schools do. And that feels good. But every time we open our church, we don't have an armed officer there. And I really don't want to live in a world like where that is the new reality. And that is literally what I text tonight, because we, you know, like many churches do this summer, you have vacation Bible schools, and you have youth programs, and you have potlucks, and you have opportunities for your seniors to gather. And those are times that you have always assumed that you're safe. And now, you know, the veil has been pulled back, and we realize that that's not necessarily true. And so every church is going to have to make decisions like that, and those affect your budget, and they affect how you feel. And I don't sit here tonight and have an answer, except for to say that I think that's on everyone's mind, and everyone is going to be working with their communities of faith to, you know, try to make them as safe as they can be. And hopefully this makes us also move toward, you know, greater action within our community for our wider world. What can we do to make our community safer?
Pastor, as you've been watching our coverage, you saw that circle of church members from other congregations coming together, holding hands, praying. I imagine you see a lot of hope there in helping this community, the St. Stephen's community, heal in the future.
Yes, I mean, obviously, it's, you know, one of the gifts of, you know, where I should say, one of the places where I always see the divine in moments of tragedy is how people connect who might not have otherwise, and how people come together with resiliency and with hope. And so obviously when people gather like that to pray, you see that. My gut is you're going to see, you know, further actions. I don't know any of that. I'm actually 50 minutes outside of the area, so I have not been present at St. Stephen's tonight. But I'm imagining you are going to see churches who, you know, come together to do more, to collectively, you know, use their weight and their voice to call for greater action within our community to make sure we're all safe. That is at least part of the shape of my prayer tonight.
Reverend Stephanie Arnold, the senior pastor at First United Methodist Church, expressing, I think, sentiments that so many of us share, and that is a sense of grieving, a sense of shock, a sense of reassessment, and also of encouragement. And I know that you will, as so many other church leaders in all kinds of different denominations and faiths in the coming days, will be gathering that effort to help and support them. So, Reverend Arnold, again, thanks for your time tonight, and appreciate the insight you shared with us.
Thanks.
So we turn here at the bottom of the hour now to 9:40, and our continuing coverage now in its third hour, starting our fourth hour of coverage, and just sort of at a loss other than to try and process what's happened tonight and what unfolded beginning about 6:22.
Yeah, let's go to our Lauren Harkson, who is on the scene there, not far from St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, where all of this unfolded. What are you hearing? What are you seeing there now, Lauren?
Yeah, that's right. We are actually right across the street from Cahaba Heights Baptist Church, which is just a few blocks away from St. Stephen's, where that shooting happened. We just got an update from Vestavia Hills police within the last 15 minutes, and the new information, obviously quite disheartening. We now know that 2 people have died from that shooting. One additional person is still being treated at UAB Hospital. We're told that one lone suspect just walked into St. Stephen's during a church meeting and started shooting. Now, that suspect has been taken into custody. We're told there is no threat at this time around the Vestavia Hills area, the Mountain Brook area. Everything is quite all right at this time, even though we do still have a police presence down at the church and right here on the street. It was blocked off for a bit now, but some of the police have since left, but there is still a presence. I know the next update that we're supposed to get will be in the morning, so that's all the updates that we have at this point. But of course, we will continue to be digging into the reason behind why this shooting happened. I spoke to quite a few people who were here at the scene just because they saw the lights, they saw the sirens, and they wanted to know what was going on in their own neighborhood. And they were very disheartened and upset to find out about all of the news. But of course, we will be keeping you updated on air and online. Live in Cahaba Heights, Lauren Harkson, WBRC Fox 6 News, on your side.
All right, Lauren, thanks so much. Our team coverage of this unfolding tragedy at the shooting in St. Stephen's Church continues in just a moment. Welcome back to our continuing team coverage of the shooting inside St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia Hills. Jonathan Hardison along with Sarah Verser, and a lot to unpack tonight, Sarah, as we're learning what happened this evening.
It all started at 6:22 in the evening. Let's go to Captain Shane Ware, who gave an update.
A lone suspect entered a small group church meeting and began shooting. 3 people were shot. 2 people are deceased. 1 person is being treated for an unknown injury at a local hospital. I would like to reiterate that the suspect is in custody. I would like to reiterate that there is no threat to the community at this time.
And with that, we learn little more from law enforcement tonight. It'll be about 12 hours or so until we hear from them again.
But the big takeaway from that last briefing was that another person had died. We started with 3 people shot, 1 person dead, and 2 people taken to the hospital, and sadly, another person has died.
We're getting some new reaction to all of this unfolding tragedy. Let's go to the First Alert Desk and Catherine Patterson for that. Catherine?
Yeah, some reaction, a lot of prayers and thoughts from our local representatives on social media. This one from Representative Terry Sewell. She says, as we wait for additional details on keeping those impacted by tonight's tragic shooting at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in my prayers. And Representative Gary Palmer tweeting this just before 9 o'clock tonight. My staff and I are closely monitoring the situation in Vestavia Hills. Please be in prayer for those being treated in the hospital and for our community as well. Vestavia Hills Baptist Church posting on their Facebook page within the last hour that they're grieving tonight with our sisters and brothers of St. Stephen's Episcopal Church after this evening's senseless shooting. News of the tragedy reached us as our VBS wrap-up event was closing. Our families and friends were able to leave safely for homes. We stand with our community, sister churches, first responders, and emergency medical personnel as they care for those experiencing the trauma of today. And that's from their pastor, Eric Spivey. And one last from the Episcopal Church in Alabama on Facebook saying, many of you have heard the news. There was a shooting tonight at St. Stephen's Vestavia Hills. Authorities are at the scene. The details are still developing. Please join us in prayer. Prayer for the healing of those injured. Comfort for the family who lost their loved one, for St. Stephen's Vestavia Hills and all of Birmingham. We're continuing to see these messages pouring in on social media as they try to send their love, support, and prayers to the victims and their families, and as they said, the community of Vestavia Hills, Birmingham, the entire country, really.
Catherine, thanks so much. Among those reacting as well, former Senator Doug Jones just tweeting in the last 5 minutes that this played out about 1.5 miles from his house and 1 mile from where their kids went to school. He says this may not count as a mass shooting, but it hits close to home. And I think that certainly speaks for all of us in terms of it hitting very close to home. We
also got a statement from the governor, and we can put that up a little bit later, but she also expressing her sorrow that this happened at the church there as well. So many people going through a gamut of emotions. Most of it is disbelief and trying to make sense of it. There is the governor's statement with the tragic news that has. There's the governor's statement. As we are learning about the shocking and tragic loss of life at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in Vestavia, we want to offer our prayers for the victims' families, the injured, and the entire church community.
Also from the Vestavia mayor reaction as well. We'll have that and more, and our team coverage continues in just a moment.
How much time? How much time?